This is Storytime with Sin, as always, and to kind of encapsulate what has gone on so far, um, because I've not read since the move. Actually, uh, I've not done a reading stream since we moved, so because things were kind of chaotic the last 2 months of the year, so I was like, I just kind of suspended the reading until after the first of the year. To kind of encapsulate the first 10 chapters, because we made that far, basically, Harry has been hired by this gal to find her husband, who has been MIA, but he's stumbling, and he's also been hired by Murphy to investigate a double murder. But also, Marcone seems to want this murder to be kept quiet. So that's kind of a TLDR of what's happened before. If you would like to catch up on um, everything that has gone on before, I do have the first two parts uploaded to my YouTube channel, so feel free to um, go back and take a listen then. Um, that's why I try to keep it all together if at all possible. So let's begin, shall we? Chapter 11, which is what a lot of people need to follow here lately. It took me the rest of the night and part of the morning, but I worked out how I could murder someone in the same manner that Tommy Tom and Jennifer Stanton had been killed. After the fifth or sixth time I had checked the figures, I stared at my calculations. It didn't make any sense. It was impossible. Or maybe we were all understanding just how dangerous this killer was. I grabbed my duster and headed out without bothering to check my looks. I didn't keep any mirrors in my home. Too many things can use mirrors as windows or doors, and I was pretty sure I looked like a wreck. The Studebakers' rearview mirror confirmed this. My face was haggard with the shadow of a beard, deep circles under bloodshot eyes, and hair that looked as though it had been riding a speeding motorcycle through a cloud of greasy smoke. Smoothing your hair back with sweaty palms as a study habit will do that to you, especially if you do it for 12 or 14 hours straight. It didn't matter. Murphy wanted this information and she needed to have it. Things were bad. Things were very, very bad. I made quick time down to the station, knowing Murphy would want to hear this from me face to face. The police station Murphy worked in was in an aged complex of buildings that housed the Metro Police Department. It was run down, sagging in places like an old soldier who nonetheless stood at attention and struggled to hold in his gut. There was graffiti along one wall that the janitor wouldn't come to scrub off till Monday morning. I parked in the visitors' parking, easy to do on a Saturday morning, and headed up the steps and into the building. The desk sergeant wasn't the usual mustachioed old warhorse who I had run into before, but a graying matron with steely eyes who disapproved of me and my lifestyle in a single glance, then made me wait while she called up Murphy. While I waited, a pair of officers came in, dragging a handcuffed man between them. He wasn't resisting them, just the opposite. In fact, his head was down. He was moaning in an almost musical way. He was on the thin side, and I got the impression that he was young. His denim jeans and jacket were battered, unkempt, as was his hair. The officers dragged him past the desk, and one of them said, "That DUI we called him, we're going to take him up to hold until he can see straight." The desk sergeant passed the clipboard over, and one of the officers took it under his arm before the two of them dragged the young man upstairs. I waited, rubbing at my tired eyes, until the sergeant managed to get through to someone upstairs. She gave a rather surprised humph and then said, "All right, Lieutenant, I'll send him on up." She waved a hand at me to go on past. I could feel her eyes on me as I went by, and I smoothed my palms self-consciously over my head and jaw. Special Investigations kept a little waiting area just within the door at the top of the staircase. It consisted of 4 wooden chairs and a sagging old couch that would probably kill your back if you tried to sleep on it. Murphy's office was at the end of the double row of cubicles. Murphy stood just inside her office with a phone pressed to her, wearing a martyred expression. She looked like a teenager having a fight with an out-of-town boyfriend, though she'd tear my head off if she heard me saying any such thing. I waved my hand. She nodded back at me. She pointed to the waiting area and then shut her office door. I took a seat in one of the chairs and leaned my head back against a wall. I just closed my eyes when I heard a scream from behind me in the hallway. There was a struggling sound and a few startled exclamations before the scream repeated itself, closer this time. I acted without thinking. I was too tired to think. I rose and went into the hall toward the source of the sound. To my left was a staircase. To my right, the hallway stretched ahead of me. A figure appeared, the silhouette of a running man moving toward me with long strides. It was the man who had hung so limply between the two officers, humming a few minutes before. He was the one screaming. I heard a scrabbling sound, and then the pair of officers I'd seen downstairs a few moments before came around the corner. Neither of them was a young man anymore, and they both ran with their bellies out, puffing for breath, holding their gun belts against their hips with one hand. "Stop!" one of the officers shouted, panting. "Stop that man!" The hair on the back of my neck prickled. The man running toward me kept on screaming, high and terrified, his voice a long, uninterrupted peal of something terror, panic, lust, rage, all rolled up into a ball and sent spewing out into the air through his vocal cords. I had a quick impression of wide, staring eyes, a dirty face, a denim jacket, and no jeans as he came down the shadowy hallway. His hands were behind his back, presumably held there by cuffs. He wasn't seeing the hall he was running through. I don't know what he was looking at, but I got the impression that I didn't want to know. He came hurtling towards me and the stairs, blind and dangerous to himself. It wasn't any of my business, but I couldn't let him break himself apart in a tumble down the stairs. I threw myself toward him as hard as I could, attempting to put my shoulder into his stomach and drive him backward in a football-style tackle. There's a reason I got cut every year during high school. I rammed into him, but he just woofed out of breath and spun to one side into a wall. It was though he hadn't seen me coming and had no realization I was there. He just kept staring blindly and screaming, careening off the lawn, continuing on his way toward the stairs. I went down to the floor, my head abruptly throbbing again, where the unknown tough had rapped me with a baseball bat last night. One good thing about being as tall as I am, I have long arms. I rolled back toward him and lashed out with one hand, fingers clutching. I caught his jeans at the cuff and gave his leg a solid sideways tug. That did it. He spun off balance and went down to the tile floor. The scream stopped as the fall took the wind from him. He slid to the top of the stairs and stopped, feebly struggling. The officers pounded past me toward him, and one going to either side. And then something strange happened. The young man looked up at me, and his eyes rounded and dilated until I thought they turned into huge black coins, dotted onto his bloodshot eyeballs. His eyes rolled back in his head until he could hardly have been able to see, and he started shouting a clarion voice. "Wizard," he trumpeted, "Wizard, I see you. I see you, Wizard. I see the things that follow those who walk before and he who walks behind. They come. They come for you." Jesus Christ on a crutch, the shorter, rounder officer said as they took the man by his arms and started dragging him back down the hall. "Junkies, thanks for this, buddy." I stared at the man, stunned. I caught the sleeve of the taller officer. "What's going on, sir?" I asked him. He stopped, letting the prisoner hang between him and his partner. The prisoner's head was bowed forward and his eyes were still rolled back, but he had his head turned toward me and was grinning a horribly toothy grin. His forehead was wrinkled oddly, almost as though he were somehow focusing on me through the bones of his brow ridges and the frontal lobes of his brain. "Junkie," the taller officer said. "One of those new 3-eye punks caught him down by the lake in his car with nearly 4 grams of the stuff, probably more in him." He shook his head. "You okay?" Fine, I assured him. 3-eye, that new drug?" The shorter officer snorted. "One that's supposed to make them see the spirit world, that kind of crap." The taller one nodded. "Stuff hooks harder than crack. Thanks for the help. Didn't know you were a civilian, though. Didn't expect anyone but police down here this time of day." "No problem," I assured him. "I'm fine." "Hey," the stouter one said. He squinted at me and shook his finger. "Aren't you the guy that psychic consultant Carmichael told me about?" "I'll take the 5th," I said to him with a grin that I didn't feel. The 2 officers chuckled and turned back to their business, quickly shouldering me aside as they dragged the prisoner away. He whispered in a mad little voice all the way down the hall, see you, Wizard. See who walks behind." I returned to my chair in the waiting area at the end of the row of cubicles and sat down, my head throbbing, my stomach rolling uncomfortably. He who walks behind. I had never seen the junkie before, never been close to him. I hadn't sensed the subtle tension of power in the air around him that signified the presence of a magical practitioner. So how the hell had he seen the shadow of he who walks behind flowing in my wake? For reasons I don't have time to go into now, I am marked, indelibly, with the remnant of the presence of a hunter spirit, a sort of spectral hitman known as he who walks behind. I had beaten long odds in surviving the enemy of mine who had called up he who walks behind and sent him after me, but even though the hunter spirit had never gotten to me, the mark could still be seen upon me by those who knew how by using the third sight, stretching out behind me like a long, horribly shaped shadow. Sort of a spiritual scar to remind me of the encounter. But only a wizard had that kind of vision, the ability to sense the auras and manifestations of magical phenomena, and that junkie had been no wizard. Was it possible that I had been wrong on my initial assessment of 3-eye? Could the drug genuinely grant to its users the visions of the third sight? I shuddered at the thought. The kind of things you see when you learn how to open your third eye could be blindingly beautiful, bring tears to your eyes, or they could be horrible, things that made your worst nightmares seem ordinary and comforting. visionings of the past, the future, the true nature of things, psychic stains, troubled shades, spirit folk of all description, the shivering power of the Never Never in all its brilliant and subtle hues, and all going straight to your brain, unforgettable and permanent. Wizards quickly learn how to control the third eye to keep it closed except in times of great need, or else they go mad within a few weeks. I shivered. If the drug was real, if it really did open the third eye in mortals instead of just inflicting ordinary hallucinations upon its users, then it's far more dangerous than it seemed. Even with the delectous effects demonstrated by the junkie I had tackled, even if a user didn't go mad from seeing too many horrible otherworldly things, sorry, he might see through the illusions and disguises of any number of beings that passed among mankind regularly unseen, which would compel such creatures to act in defense for fear of being revealed. Double jeopardy. Sorry, I'm having to tend to something right quick. Pardon me. Alright, back to the book. Sorry about that. Dresden, Murphy snapped. Wake up. I blinked. I'm not asleep, I slurred, just resting my eyes. She snorted. Save it, Harry, and pushed a styrofoam cup into my hands. She'd made me coffee with a ton of sugar in it just the way I like, and even though it was a little stale, it smelled like heaven. You're an angel, I muttered. I took a sip and then nodded down the row of cubicles. You want to hear this one in your office? I could feel her eyes on me as I drank. All right, she said. Let's go, and the coffee's 50 cents, Harry. I followed her to her office, a hastily assembled thing with cheap plywood walls and a door that wasn't hung quite straight. The door had a paper sign taped to it, neatly lettered in black magic marker with Lieutenant Karen Murphy. There was a rectangle of lighter wood where a plaque had once held some other hapless policeman's name. That the officer never bothered to put up a fresh plaque was not so subtle a reminder of the precarious position of the Special Investigations Director. Her office furnished the entire interior of the office, in fact, was a contrast with the outside. Her desk and chair were sleek, dark, and new. Her PC was always on and running on its own desk set immediately to her left. A bulletin board covered most of one wall, and current cases were neatly organized on it. Her college diploma, the Aikido trophies, and her marksman's awards were on the wall to one's immediate right as you entered the office, and sitting there right next to your face if you were standing before her desk or sitting in the chair in front of it. That was Murphy, organized, direct, determined, and just a little bit belligerent. Never wonder why. And anyone wonders why I relate to her so much? Well, there's the reason right there. Because that's exactly what I am. Organized, direct, determined, just a little bit belligerent. Hold it, Murphy told me. I stopped outside of her office as I always did while she went inside and turned off, then unplugged her computer and the small radio on her desk. Murphy is used to the kind of mayhem that happens whenever I get around machinery. After she was done, I went on in. I sat down and slurped more coffee. Speaking of which, I'm going to have a slurp of tea. Mm-hmm. Immersion. She slid up onto the edge of her desk, looking down at me, her blue eyes narrowed. She was dressed no less casually on a Saturday than she was on a work day, dark slacks and a dark blouse set off by her golden hair and bright silver necklace and earrings. Very stylish. I, in my rumpled sweats and t-shirt, black duster, and mussed hair, felt very slouchy. All right, Harry, she said. What have you got for me? I took one last drink of coffee, stifled a yawn, and put the cup down on her desk. She slipped a coaster under it as I started speaking. I was up all night working on it, I said, keeping my voice soft. I had a hell of a time figuring out the spell, and as near as I can figure it, it's almost impossible to do to one person, let alone two at once. She glared at me. Don't tell me almost impossible. I've got two corpses that say otherwise. Keep your shirt on, I growled at her. I'm just getting started. You've got to understand the whole thing if you're going to understand any of it. Her glare intensified. She put her hands on the edge of her desk and in a deadly reasonable tone. All right, why don't you explain it to me? I rubbed at my eyes again. Look, whoever did this did it with a thaumaturgic spell. That much I'm sure of. He or she used some of Tom's and Jennifer Stanton's hair or fingernails or something to create a link to them. Then they ripped out a symbolic heart of some kind from some kind of ritual doll or sacrificial animal and used a whale of amount of energy to make the same thing happen to the victims. This doesn't tell me anything new, Harry. I'm getting there, I said. The amount of energy you need to do this is staggering. It would be a lot easier to manage a small earthquake than to affect a living being like that. Best case scenario, I might be able to do it without killing myself. To one person who had really, really pissed me off. You're naming yourself as a suspect? Murphy's mouth quirked at the corner. I snorted. I said I was strong enough to do it to one person. Do you I think it would kill me to try too. You're saying that some sort of wizard version of Arnold Schwarzenegger pulled this off? I shrugged. It's possible, I suppose. More likely, someone who's just really good pulled it off. Raw power doesn't determine all that you can do with magic. Focus matters too. The better your focus is, the better you are at putting your power in one place at the same time, the more you can get done. Sort of like when you see some ancient little Chinese martial arts master shatter a tree trunk with his hands. He couldn't lift a puppy over his head, but he can focus what power he does have with incredible effort. Murphy glanced at her Aikido trophies and nodded. Okay, she said, I can understand that, I think. So we're looking for the wizard version of Mr. Miyagi. Or, I said, lifting a finger, more than one wizard worked on this at the same time, pulled their power together and used it all at once. My pounding head combined with the queasy stomach and the caffeine was making me a little woozy. Teamwork. Teamwork, that's what counts. Multiple killers, Murphy drawled. I don't have one, and you're telling me there might be 50. 13, I corrected her. You can never use more than 13, but I don't think that's very likely. It's a bitch to do. Everyone in the circle has to be committed to the spell, have no doubts, no reservations, and they have to trust one another implicitly. You don't see that kind of thing from your average gang of killers. It just isn't something that's going to happen outside of some kind of fanaticism, a cult, or political organization. A cult, Murphy said. She rubbed at her eyes. The arcane is going to have a field day with this one if it gets out. So Bianca is involved in this after all. Surely she's got enough enemies out there who could do this. She could inspire to that kind of effort to get rid of her. I shook my head. The pain was getting worse, heavier, but pieces were falling into place. No, you're thinking the wrong angle here. The killer wasn't taking out the hooker and Tommy Tom to get at Bianca. How do you know? I went to see her, I responded. Damn it, Harry! I didn't react to her anger. You know she wasn't going to talk to you, Murph. She's an old-fashioned monster girl, no cooperation with the authorities. But she did talk to you, Murphy demanded. I said pretty please. I would beat you to crap if you didn't already look like it, Murphy said. What did you find out? Bianca wasn't in on it. She didn't have a clue who it could have been. She was nervous, scared. I didn't mention that she had been scared enough to try to take me to pieces. So someone was sending a message, but not to Bianca. To Johnny Marcone, I confirmed. Gang war in the streets, Murphy said, and now the outfit is bringing sorcery into it as well. Mafioso magic spells. Jesus Christ. She drummed her heels on the edge of the desk. Gang war, 3-Eye suppliers versus conventional narcotics, right? She stared at me for a minute. Yeah, Murphy said. Yeah, it is. How'd you know? We've been holding out details from the papers. I just ran into this guy who was stoned off his mind on 3-Eyes. Something he said makes me think that stuff isn't a bunch of crap. It's for real. And you would have to be one very badass wizard, very, very badass wizard to manufacture a large quantity of this kind of drug. Murphy's blue eyes glittered. So whoever is the one supplying the streets with 3-Eye is the one who murdered Jennifer Staunton and Tommy Tom. I'm pretty sure of it. It feels right. I tend to agree, Murphy said, nodding. All right, then. How many people do you know of who could manage the killing spell? Christ, Murphy, I said. You can't just ask me to hand you a list of names of people to drag downtown for questioning. She leaned down closer to me, blue eyes fierce. Wrong, Harry. I can ask you. I can tell you to give them to me. And if you don't, I can haul you in for obstruction and complicity so quick it'll make your head spin. My head's already spinning, I told her. A little giggle slipped out. Throbbing head, pound, pound, pound. You wouldn't do that, Murph. I know you. You know damn well that if I had anything you could use, I would give it to you. If you'd just let me in on the investigation, give me the chance. No, Harry, she said, her voice flat. Not a chance. I'm ass deep in alligators already without you getting difficult on me. You're already hurt, and don't ask me to buy some line about falling down the stairs. I don't want to have to scrape you off the concrete. Whoever did Tommy Tom is going to get nasty when someone comes poking around, and it isn't your job to do it, it's mine. Suit yourself, I told her. You're the one with the deadline. Her face went pale and her eyes blazed. You're such an incredible shit, Harry. I started to answer her. I really did, but my skull got loose and shaky on my neck, and things spun around, and my chair sort of wobbled up onto its back legs and whirled about precariously. I thought it was probably safest to slide my way along to the floor, rubbery as a snake. The tiles were nice and cool underneath my cheek, and it felt sort of comforting. My head went boom, boom, boom the whole time I was down there, spoiling what would have been otherwise been a pleasant little nap. He's like, I just fell the fuck out. Sorry, I had taken a drink. Chapter 12. I woke up on the floor in Murphy's office. The clock on the wall said it was about 20 minutes later. Something soft was underneath my head, and my feet were propped up with several phone books. Murphy was pressing a cool cloth against my forehead and throat. I felt terrible. Exhausted, achy, nauseous, my head throbbing. I wanted to do nothing so much as curl up and whimper myself to sleep. Given that I would never live that down, I made a wisecrack instead. Do you have a little white dress? I've had this deep-seated nurse fantasy about you, Murphy. A pervert like you would. Who hit your head? She demanded. No one, I mumbled, fell down the stairs to my apartment. Bullshit, Harry, she said, her voice hard. Her hands were no less gentle with the cool cloth, though. You've been running around on this case. That's where you've got the bump on your head, isn't it? I started to protest. Oh, save it, she said, letting out a breath. If you didn't already have a concussion, I'd tie your heels to my car and drive through traffic. She held up two fingers. How many fingers am I holding up? 50, I said, and held up two of my own. It's not a concussion, just a little bump on the head. I'll be fine. I started to sit up. I needed to get home, get some sleep. Murphy put her hand on my neck and pressed me back down on the pillow beneath my head, which was apparently her jacket because she wasn't wearing it. Stay down, she growled. How did you get here? Not in that heap of a car, I hope. The Beatles doing its Phoenix impression, I told her. I've got a loner. Look, I'll be fine. Just let me out of here. I'll go home and get some sleep. You aren't in any shape to drive, Murphy said. You're a menace. I'd have to arrest myself if I let you get behind the wheel in your condition. Murph, I said, annoyed, unless you can pay up what you owe me already right now, I can't exactly afford a cab. Dream on, Harry, Murphy said, and save your breath. I'll give you a ride home. I don't need it, I began, but she got up from her knees and stalked out of her office. Foolishness, I thought. Stupidity. I was perfectly capable of moving myself around. So I sat up and heaved myself to my feet, or tried to. I actually managed to sit half sit up, and then I just heaved. Murphy came back in to find me curled on my side, her office stinking from where I'd just thrown up. She didn't, for a change, say anything. She just knelt by me again, cleaned off my mouth, and put another cool cloth on the back of my neck. I remember her helping me out to her car. I remember little pieces of the drive back to my apartment. I remember her giving her the keys to the loaner and mumbling something about Mike and the tow truck driver. But mostly I remember the way her hand felt on mine, cold with a little bit of nervousness to the soft fingers, small beneath my great gawking digits, and strong. She scolded and threatened me the entire way back to the apartment, I think. But I remember the way she made sure she held my hand as though to assure herself that I was still there. Or to assure me that she wasn't going anywhere. There's a reason I'll go on a limb to help Murphy. She's good people. One of the best. We got back to my apartment sometime before noon. Murphy helped me down the stairs and unlocked the door for me. Mister came running up, hurled himself against her legs in greeting. Maybe being short give her better leverage or something, since she didn't really wobble when Mister rammed her like I do, or maybe it's the Aikido. Christ, Harry, she muttered, this place is dark. She tried the light switch, but the bulbs were burnt out last week and I hadn't had the cash to replace them. So she sat me down on the couch and lit some candles off the glowing coals in the fireplace. All right, she said, I'm putting you to bed. Well, if you insist. The phone rang. It was an arm's reach, so I picked it up. Dresden, I mumbled. Mr. Dresden, this is Linda Randall. Do you remember me? Do men remember the scene in the movie where Madeline is standing over the subway grating? I found myself remembering Linda Randall's eyes and wondering things a gentleman shouldn't. Are you naked? I said. It took me a minute to register what I said. Whoops. Murphy gave me an arch look. She stood up and walked into my bedroom, busied herself straightening the covers and giving me a modicum of privacy. I felt cheered. My slip had thrown Murphy off better than any lie I could have managed. Maybe a woozy Harry was not necessarily a bad Harry. Linda purred and laughed into the phone. I'm in the car right now, honey. Maybe later. Look, I've come up with a few things that might help you. Can you meet me tonight? I rubbed my eyes. It was Saturday today. It was Saturday night. Wasn't there something I was supposed to do tonight? To hell with it, I thought. It couldn't have been all that important if I couldn't remember it. Sure, I told her, fine. She into the phone. You're such a gentleman. I like that once in a while. I'll get off at 7, all right? Do you want to meet me? Say at 8. My car exploded, I said. My tongue felt fuzzy. I can meet you at 7-Eleven down the street from my apartment. She poured that rich, creamy laughter into my ear again. Tell you what, give me an extra hour or so to go home, get a nice hot bath, make myself all pretty, and I'll be there in your arms. Sound good to you? Oh, okay. She laughed again and didn't say goodbye before disconnecting. Murphy appeared again as soon as I hung up the phone. Tell me you just didn't make a date, Dresden. You're just jealous, Murphy snorted. Please. I need more of a man than you to keep me happy. She started to get an arm beneath me to help me up. You'd break like a dry stick, Dresden. You better get into bed before you get any more delusions. I put a hand against her shoulder to push her back. I didn't have that kind of strength, but she backed off, frowning. What? Something, I said. I rubbed at my eyes. Something was bothering me. I was forgetting something. I was sure of it. Something I said I would do on Saturday. I struggled to push thoughts of drug wars and people driven mad by third sight visions given them by the three-eyed drug and tried to concentrate. It didn't take long to click. Monica. I had told her I would get in contact with her. I padded at my duster pockets until I found my notepad and took it out. Fumbled it open and waved at Murphy. Kendall, I need to read something. Christ, Dresden, I swear you're at least as bad as my first husband. He was stubborn enough to kill himself, too. She sighed and brought a candle over. The light hurt my eyes for a moment. I made out Monica's number and dialed her up. Hello? A male child's voice asked. Hi, I said. I need to speak to Monica, please. Who's this? I remembered I was working for her on the sly and answered. Her fourth cousin, Harry, from Vermont. Okay, said the kid. Hold on. Then he screamed without lowering the mouthpiece of the phone from his lips. Mom! Your cousin Harry from Vermont is on the phone long distance. Kids, you gotta love my adore children. A little salt, a little squeeze of lemon. Perfect. I waited for the pounding in my head to resolve into mere agony as the kid dropped the phone and ran off, at feet thumping on the hardwood floor. A moment later, there was the rattle of the phone being picked up, and Monica's quiet, somewhat nervous voice said, hello? It's Harry Dresden, I told her. I just wanted to call you and let you know what I've been able to find out for your... I'm sorry, she interrupted me. I don't, need any of those. I blinked. Monica Sells? I read the phone number. Yes, she said, her voice hurried and impatient. We don't need any help, thank you. Is this a bad time? No, it's not that. I just wanted to cancel my order, discontinue the service. Don't worry about me. There was an odd quality to her voice, as though she were forcing a housewife's good cheer into it. Cancel? You don't want me looking for your husband anymore? But, ma'am, the money... The phone began to buzz and static and made the line fuzzy. I thought I heard a voice in the background somewhere, and then the sound went dead except for the static. For a moment, I thought I'd lost the connection entirely. Blasted, unreliable phones. Usually they messed up on my end, not on the receiving end. You can't even trust them to foul up dependably. Hello? Hello? I said, cross and grumpy. Monica's voice returned. Don't worry about that. Thank you so much for all your help. Good night. Bye-bye. Thank you. Then she hung up on me. I took the phone away from my ear and stared at it. Bizarre, I said. Come on, Harry, Murphy said. She took the phone from my hand and planted it firmly in the crater. Oh, Mom, it's not even dark yet. I made the lame joke to try to think about something besides how terribly my head was going to hurt when Murphy helped me up. She did. It did. We hobbled into the bedroom, and when I stretched out on the cool sheets, I was reasonably certain that I was going to set down roots. Murphy took my temperature, and I felt my scalp with her fingers, careful around the goose egg on the back of my skull. She shined a penlight into my eyes, which I did not like. She also got me a drink of water, which I did like, and had me swallow a couple of aspirin or Tylenol or something. I only remember two more things about that morning. One was Murphy stripping me out of my shirt, boots, and socks, and leaning down to kiss my forehead and ruffle my hair, and then she covered me up with blankets and put out the lights. Mister crawled up and lay down across my legs, purring like a small diesel engine. Comforting. The second thing I remember was the phone ringing again. Murphy was just about to leave, her car keys rattling in her hand. I heard her turn back to pick up the phone and say, Harry Dresden's residence. There was a silence. Hello? Murphy said. After another pause, Murphy appeared in the doorway, a small shadow looking down at me. Wrong number. Get some rest, Harry. Thanks, Karen. I smiled at her, or tried to. It must have looked ghastly. She smiled back, and I'm sure hers was nicer than mine. She left then. The apartment got dark and quiet. Mister continued to rumble soothingly in the dark. It kept nagging me even as I fell asleep. What had I forgotten? And another less sensible question, who had been on the line who hadn't wanted to speak to Murphy? Had Monica Sells tried to call me back? Why would she call me off the case and tell me to keep the money? I pondered that and baseball bats and other matters until Mister's purring put me to sleep. I'll try to take a drink in between chapters. Chapter 13. I woke up when the thunder rattled the old house above me. True dark had fallen. I had no idea what time it was. I lay in bed for a moment, confused and a little dizzy. There was a warm spot on my legs where Mister must have been till a few moments before. But the big gray cat was nowhere to be seen. He was a chicken about thunderstorms. Rain was coming down in sheets. I could hear it on the concrete outside and on the old building above me. It creaked and swayed in the spring thunderstorm in the winds, timbers, and the wind, timbers gently flexing, wise enough with age to give a little rather than put up stubborn resistance until they broke. I could probably stand to learn something from that. Excuse me. My stomach growling, I got out of bed, wobbled a little, and rooted about for my robe. I couldn't find it in the dark, but came across my duster where Murphy had left it in a chair, neatly folded. Laying on top of it was the scattering of cash, along with a napkin bearing the words, "You will pay me back, Murphy." I scowled at the money and tried to ignore the flash of gratitude I felt. I picked up my duster and tugged it on over my bare chest, and I padded on naked feet out into the living room. Thunder rumbled again, growling outside. I could feel the storm in a way that a lot of people can't, and that most of those who can put it down to nerves. It was raw energy up there, naked and pulsing through the clouds. I could feel the water and the rain and clouds, the moving air blowing the droplets and gusts against the walls of the house above. I could sense waiting, the fire of deadly lightning leaping from cloud to cloud above and seeking a path of least resistance to the patient, timeless earth that bore the brunt of the storm's attack. All four elements interacting, moving, energy flashing from place to place in each of its forms. There was a lot of potential in storms that a sorcerer could tap into if he was desperate or stupid enough. A lot of energy to be used up there where the forces of ancient nature brawled and tumbled. I frowned thinking about that. It hadn't occurred to me before. Hadn't there been a storm on Wednesday night? Yes, there had. I remember thunder waking me for a few moments in the hours before dawn. Could our killer have tapped into it to fuel his spells? Possibly. It bore looking into. Such tap magic was often too unstable and too volatile to use in such a carefully directed fashion. Lightning flashed again, and I counted 3 or 4 seconds before the rumble reached me. If the killer was using the storms, it would make sense that if he or she were to strike again, it would happen tonight. I shivered. My stomach growled, and more mundane matters took my attention. My head was feeling somewhat better. I wasn't dizzy anymore. My stomach was furious with me, like a lot of tall, skinny men. I eat endlessly, but it never stays on. I have no idea why. I shambled into the kitchen and started building up the grill. Mister, I called you hungry, bud. I'm going to fry up some of those burgers. Mm-mm-mm. Lightning flashed again, closer this time, the thunder following right on its heels. The flash was bright enough to sear through my half-sunken windows and make me wince against it, but in the flash of light I caught sight of Mister. The cat was up on the top of my bookshelf in the far corner of the apartment, as far as it was possible to get away from my front door. He was watching it, his eyes luminous in the half-dark, and though he had the cat-lazy look of any lounging feline, his ears was tilted forward, and his gaze focused unwaveringly upon the door. If he had had a tail, it would have been twitching. There came a knocking, a rapping at my chamber door. Maybe it was the storm making me nervous, but I quested out with my senses, feeling for any threat that might have been there. The storm made a mess of things, and all that noise, both physical and spiritual, kept me from being able to tell anything more that there was someone outside my door. I felt in the pocket of my duster for the gun, but I remembered that I had set it aside in the lab last night and had not taken it with me down to the police station. Police don't take kindly to no one but police toting firearms inside the station. Don't ask me why. In any case, it was out of easy reach now. And then I remembered that Linda Randall was supposed to be showing up. I berated myself for getting spooked so easily, and then again for sleeping so long, and then again for looking and smelling like I hadn't showered in a couple of days, or combed my hair, or shaved, or anything else that might have made me marginally less unappealing. Ah, well, I got the impression that with Linda, but that sort of thing didn't seem to matter much. Maybe she was into ode to home. I walked over the door and opened it, smoothing back my hair with one hand and trying to keep a sheepish grin off my face. Susan Rodriguez waited outside in the rain, her black umbrella held above her. She wore a khaki trench coat and an expensive black dress beneath it with heels. Pearls shone in her throat and ears. She blinked at me when I appeared in the door. Harry? I stared at her. Oh my gosh, I had forgotten my date with Susan. How in the world could I have forgotten that? I mean, the White Council, the police, vampires, concussions, junkies, rat mob bosses, and baseball bat swinging thugs notwithstanding. Hey, Brady, how you doing? How are you? What cat butt? Uh-huh. I stared at Ussie. Well, no, there probably weren't any women incredible enough to make me keep my mind on them all through all that, but all the same, it seemed a little rude to me. Hi, Susan, I said lamely. I peered past her. When had Susan said she was going to show up 9? And when had Linda said 8? No, wait, she said 8 o'clock at first and then said she'd be another hour after that at 9. Whoo, boy, this is not going to be pretty. Susan read me like a book and glanced behind her in the rain before looking back at me, expecting someone, Harry. Not exactly, I told her. Well, maybe. Look, come on in, you're getting drenched, which wasn't exactly true. I was getting drenched, my bare feet soaked. Standing there in the open door, the wind blowing rain down the stairway at me. Susan's mouth quirked in a malicious, predatory little smile. Then she came in, folding down her umbrella and brushing past me. This your apartment? Nah, I told her, this is my summer home in Zurich. She eyed me as I closed the door, took her coat, and hung it up on a tall old wooden hat stand near the doorway. Susan turned away from me as I hung up her coat. The dress showed her back, the long curve of her spine, all the way down to her waist. It had a fairly tame hemline and long, tight sleeves. I liked it a lot. She let me see her back for a while now. She walked away from me toward the fireplace and slowly turned to face me, smirking, leaning one smooth hip on the couch. Her midnight hair was bound up on top of her head, displaying a long, slender neck. Her skin an advertisement for something smooth and wonderful. Her lips quirked up at the corners, and she narrowed her dark, flashing eyes at me. The police having you put in overtime, Harry. The police having you put in overtime, Harry? She drawled. The killings must be sensational. Major crime figure murdered with magic. Care to make a statement? I winced. She was still hunting for an angle for the arcane. Sure, I told her, her eyes wide and surprised. I need a shower. I said, I'll be right back. Mister, keep an eye on the lady, eh? Susan gave me a little roll of her eyes, then glanced up and studied Mister on his perch on the bookcase. Mister, for his part, flicked an ear and continued staring at the door. More thunder rumbled overhead. I lit a few candles for her and then took one with me to the bathroom. Think, Harry. Get awake and get your head clear. What to do? Get clean, I told myself. You smell like a horse. Get some cool water over your head and work this out. Linda Randall is going to be here in a minute, and you need to figure out how to keep Susan from prying her nose into the murders. So advised, I agreed with myself and hurriedly got undressed and into the shower. I don't use a water heater, and consequently, I'm more than used to cold showers. Actually, given how often I and wizards in general get to date actual real women, maybe that's just as well. I was just lathering up the shampoo when the lightning got a lot worse and the thunder got a lot louder and the rain a lot harder. The height of the storm had hit the old house and hit it hard. It was almost possible to see clearly in the violent electrical discharge. Almost impossible to hear over the thunder, but I caught a flicker of motion out of the corner of my eye. A shadow moved across the sunken window covered by modest curtains in the bathroom. Someone was moving toward the stairs down to my apartment. Did I mention how I haven't had a ton of success with women? Nights like this are one reason why. I panicked hard. I leapt out of the shower with my head all sudsy and wrapped in a towel around my waist and headed out into the front room. I couldn't let Linda just come to the door and have Susan answer it. That would be the cattiest thing you'd ever seen. And I'd be the one to get all the scratches and bites, too. I rounded the corner from my bedroom into the main room and saw Susan reaching for the doorknob. Lightning flashed again, and the thunder kept me from hearing the knobs click clack. I heard something else, though, a snarling, spitting sound. I saw Mister on his feet now, his back arched on his fur fluffed out, teeth bared, and his no longer sleepy eyes fastened on the door. The thunder passed as Susan swung the door open. I could see her face in profile. One hand was on her hip, and there was an amused, dangerous little smile on her pretty mouth. As the door opened, I felt it, the cloud of energies that accompanies a spirit being when it comes into the mortal world. Disguised until now by the background cloud of the storm, a figure stood in the doorway, rather squat, less than 5 feet tall, dressed in a plain brown trench coat, illuminated by blue lightning overhead. There was something wrong to the shape, something that just wasn't part of good old Mother Earth. Its head turned to look at me, and sudden twin points of fire as blue as the lightning dancing above flared up, illuminating the leathery, inhuman curves of a face that most closely resembled that of a large warty toad. Susan got a good look at the demon's eyes and face from 2 feet away and screamed. Susan, I shouted, already moving toward the couch. Get out of the way! I threw myself on the floor behind the couch and landed with a whoop on the hard floor, hitting my ribs. The demon's jaws parted in a silent hiss, and the throat constricted weirdly as I vanished behind the couch. There was a hissing sound, and a heart-sized section of the couch just dissolved in a cloud of mist and foul stench. Droplets of the liquid spattered through onto the floor near me, and little holes corroded outward in the space of 2 seconds. I rolled away from the couch and the demon's acid. Susan, I shouted, get back toward the kitchen. Don't get between it and me. What is it? She screamed at me. A bad guy. I poked my head up and peered through the smoking hole in the couch, ready to duck back down in a moment's notice. The demon, squat and bulkier than a human, was standing in the doorway, both long-fingered, pad-tipped hands leaning forward toward the inside of the house. It paused as though resting against a light screen. Why isn't it coming in? Susan asked from the far corner near the door. Her back was pressed to the wall and her eyes were wide and terrified. My God, I thought, just don't pass out on me, Susan. Homestead laws, I said. It isn't a mortal creature. It has to gather its energy to push through the barrier around a home. Can it get in? She said. Her voice was thin and reedy. She was asking questions, gathering information, data, falling back on her ingrained career instincts because I suspected her rational brain had short-circuited. That happens to people who get a good hard look at a demon for the first time. I'm going to have to pause right there because we're about to have an ad break and I don't want anybody missing anything. So I'm going to pause for just a moment and take another drink. I hate to be on such a um, cliffhanger there, but we're probably going to have our first ad break of the stream. There should be any moment now. Yep, there it is. Ad break for 3 minutes. So I do apologize for the ad break, but there'll be more reading as soon as we come back from it. Well, I hope everybody's having a good Wednesday. This is when I usually would actually do reading streams and stuff. Plus, it's kind of overcast and kind of cold out here. Let's take a quick look at my weather. Um, take the it is currently 25 degrees. They're talking about a little bit of snow, and it's going to drop down to 10 before the day's over. Let's see, it's going to be single digits tonight. Oh boy. Yeah, it's going to be like negative. Oh lordy, it's going to be like real feel 7 when I get up to go to PT tomorrow. Oh joy, that's going to be fun. Not. Yeah, it's going to be really, really cold, so I'm going to have to kind of bundle up tomorrow. Hopefully, I will have. And tomorrow, I'm planning on basically cleaning between PT and my other therapy tomorrow, and that's one reason why I kind of have it on schedule now because I'm going to PT on Thursdays, the same Thursday I have therapy. So basically, it's every other week. I do still have PT on Tuesdays, but it's like every other week now. So I'm probably not going to be going to PT much longer though. But yeah, I'm just kind of chilling until the ad breaks over. I don't like to read during the ad breaks because for those of you that don't have a sub, I don't want anybody to miss anything. I mean, don't get me wrong, it'll be posted to YouTube probably by the end of the month, but still. And I say by the end of the month because I'm trying to be generous with myself. But we only got about another 15 seconds, and then we get back to the action, as they say. And we're back. Alrighty, back to what we were at. I hurried over to her and grabbed her arm, dragging her back toward the door and leading down to my lab. Get down there, I shouted, jerking the door up and revealing the folding ladder staircase. It's dark, Susan protested. Oh, God, she blinked down at my waist. Harry, why are you naked? I looked down and blushed. The towel must have fallen off while I was dancing around. Looking down made the shampoo suds still in my hair run down to my eyes, making them sting and burn. Could this evening get any worse? Never asked that question. There was a tearing sound from the doorway, and the toad demon sort of surged forward in a stumbling step. It was now in my house. Lightning still danced in the sky behind. I could only see it in an ugly hunchback outline, except for the electric light off its round, googly eyes as it came toward me. Its throat working in little undulating motions. Crap, I said. I'm quite eloquent in times of crisis. I shoved Susan toward the stairs and turned toward the demon, the tips of my thumbs touching. Fingers spread, palms outward toward it. The demon's mouth opened again, and it made a slick, spitooning sound. Vento reflidium, I shouted, willing my fear and anxiety into a tangible shape, throwing it down from my pounding heart through my shoulders and arms directed at the foe. The globule of demon acid sped toward my face. My terror and adrenaline roared out of my fingertips in the form of wind, gathering up speed enough to tear the hair from my man's head. It caught the blob of acid, flung it back at the demon in a fine spray, stopping the thing dead in its tracks, and even drove it back several feet. Its claw-tipped feet sliding on my smooth floor, catching on the rugs. The acid sizzled and spat little electric blue sparks on its skin, but it didn't seem to harm the demon. It did, however, dissolve the trench coat to shreds in less time than it takes to draw a breath and wreak havoc on my rugs and furniture. The demon shook its head, gathering its wits. I turned to the far corner near the door and extended my hand, trumpeting, Vento Sororitas! The pale, smooth wood of my wizard's staff all but glowed in the darkness as it flew toward me, driven by a gentler, finer blast of the same wind. I caught it in my hand and spun it toward the demon, calling on the lights of power and force deep within the long, unbroken grains of wood in the staff. I extended the staff outward toward horizontally like a bard, shouted, Out, out, out! You are not welcome here! A touch dramatic in any other circumstance, maybe, but when you've got a demon in your living room, nothing seems too extreme. The toad demon hunched its shoulders, planted its broad feet, and grunted as a wave of unseen force swept out from my staff like a broom whisking along the floor. I could feel the demon resist me, pressing against the strength of the staff, as though I were leaning the wood against a vertical steel bar and attempting to snap it across its length. We strained silently for several seconds till I realized that this thing was just too strong for me. I wasn't going to be able to brush it off like a minor imp or a niggling poltergeist. It wouldn't take me long to exhaust myself, and once the demon could move again, it was either going to dissolve me with its acid or else just wall up to me and rip me into pieces. It would be stronger than a mortal, a hell of a lot faster, and it was not going to stop until I was dead or the sun came up or any number of other unlikely conditions were met. Susan, I shouted in my chest heaving. Are you down there? Yes, she said. Is it gone? Not exactly, no. I felt my palms get sweaty. The smooth wood of the staff began to slip. The burning of the soap suds in my eyes increased, and the lights of the demon's eyes brightened. Why don't you set it on fire? Shoot it. Blow it up, the voice said, had a searching quality to it, as though she were looking around there in the lab. I can't, I said to her. I can't pump enough juice into it to hurt the thing without blowing us up along with it. You've got to get out of there. My mind was racing along, calculating possibilities, numbers, My reserves of energy is cold and rational. The thing was here for me if I drew it off to one side into my bedroom and the bathroom. Susan might be able to escape. On the other hand, it might be under orders to kill me and any witnesses, in which case, after it finished with me, it would simply go off to her as well. There had to be another way to get her out of here. And then I remembered. Susan, I shouted, there's a sports bottle on my table down there. Drink what's in it and think about being away from here, okay? Think about being far away. I found it, she called up a second later. It smells bad. Damn it, it's a potion. It'll get you out of here. Drink it. There was a gagging noise, and then a moment later she said, now what? I blinked and looked at the stairs going down. It should have worked. I broke off as the toad thing leaned forward, reached out a clawed foot, and in that stride gained 3 feet of ground toward me. I was able to stop it again, barely, but I knew that it was going to come after my throat in a few more seconds. Nothing happened, she said. Damn it, Harry, we have to do something. And then she came pounding up the ladder, dark eyes flashing, my .38 revolver in her hand. No, I told her, don't. I felt the staff slip more. The demon was getting ready to come through all my defenses. Susan raised the gun, face pale, her hands shaking, started shooting. A .38 Chief Special carries 6 rounds, and I use a medium speed load rather than armor-piercing or explosive bullets or anything fancy like that. Fewer chances that something will go wrong in the presence of a lot of magic. A gun is a pretty simple machine. A revolver approach is very simple. Wheels, gears, and a simple lever impact and ignite the powder. It's tough for magic to argue with physics most of the time. The revolver roared 6 times. The first 2 shots must have gone wide and hit somewhere else. The next 2 struck the demon's hide and made deep dents in it before springing off and rebounding wildly around the room, as I'd feared they would. More of a threat to us than to it. Fortunately, neither was injured or killed by the ricochets. The 5th shot went between its long, oddly shaped legs and past it. The 6th hit the thing square between its lightning lantern eyes, knocked it off balance, and sent it tumbling over with a toady hiss of frustration. Basically, basic weapons ain't gonna fuck with this thing. I gasped and grabbed at Susan's wrist. Basement, I wheezed, and she dropped the gun. We both scrambled down the ladder. I didn't bother to shut it behind me. The thing could just tear its way through the floor if it needed to. This way, I would at least know where it would come from. At least I know where it would come down, rather than have it tunnel through the floor and come out the top of my head. At my will, the tip of the staff I still held burst into light, illuminating the room. Harry? Bob's voice came from the shelf. The skull eyelights came on and swiveled around to face me. What the hell is going on? Who's the babe? Susan jumped. What is that? Ignore him, I said, and followed my own advice. I went to the far end of my lab table, started kicking boxes, bags, notebooks, and old paperbacks off the floor. Help me clear this floor space. Hurry. She did, and I cursed the lack of cleaning skills that had left this end of the lab in such a mess. I was struggling to get to the circle I had laid in the floor, a perfect ring of copper, an unbroken loop in the concrete that could be empowered to hold a demon in or out. Harry, Bob gulped as we worked. There's a seriously badass toad demon coming down the ladder. I know that, Bob. I heaved a bunch of empty cardboard boxes as Susan frantically tossed some papers away, exposing the entirety of the copper ring about 3 feet across. I took her hand and stepped into the circle, drawing her close to me. What's happening? Susan asked, her expression bewildered and terrified. Just stay close, I told her. She clung tightly to me. It sees you, Harry, Bob reported. It's going to spit something at you, I think. I didn't have time to see if Bob was right. I leaned down and touched the circle with the tip of my staff and wheeled power into it to shut the creature out. The circle sprang up around us, a silent and invisible tension in the air. Something splattered and hissed at the air a few inches from my face. I looked up to see dark, sputtering acid slithering off the invisible shields the circle's power provided us. Half a second earlier, and it would have eaten my face off, Turi thought. I tried to catch my breath, stand straight, and not let any part of me extend outside the circle, which would break its circuit and negate its power. My arms were shaking, my legs felt weak. Susan, too, was visibly trembling. The demon stalked over to us. I could see it clearly in the light of my staff, and I wished that I couldn't. It was horribly ugly, misshapen, foul, heavily muscled, and I compared it to a toad only because I knew of nothing else that would remotely approach the description of it. It glared at us and drove a fist at the circle's shield. It rebounded in a shower of blue sparks, and the thing hissed, a horrible, windy sound. Outside, the storm continued to rumble and growl, muffled by the thick walls of the sub-basement. Susan was holding close to me and almost crying. Why isn't it killing us? Why isn't it getting us? It can't, I said gently. It can't get through, and it can't do anything to break the circle. So long as neither of us crosses that line, we're safe. Oh, God, Susan said. How long do we have to stand here? Dawn, I said. Until dawn, when the sun rises, it has to go. There's no sun down here, she said. It doesn't work that way. It's got a sort of power cord stretching back to whoever summoned it. A fuel line. As soon as the sun comes up, that line gets cut and it goes away like a balloon with no air. When does the sun come up? She asked. Oh, well, about 10 more hours. Oh, she said. She laid her head against my bare chest and closed her eyes. The toad demon paced in a slow circuit around the circle, searching for a weakness in the shield. It would find none. I closed my eyes and tried to think. Harry, Bob began. Not now, Bob. But Harry, Bob tried again. Damn it, Bob, I'm trying to think. If you want to be really useful, you could try to figure out why that escape potion you were so confident of didn't work for Susan. Harry, Bob protested. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Susan murmured against my chest. Is it getting warm in here, or is it just me? A terrible suspicion struck me. I looked down at Susan and got a sinking feeling. Surely not. No, it couldn't be. She looked up at me, her dark eyes smoky. We're going to die, aren't we, Harry? Have you ever thought you'd want to die making love? She kissed my chest almost absently. It felt nice, really, really nice. I tried not to notice all the bare, lovely back that naked underneath my hand. I've thought that many times, she said against my skin. Bob, I began, my voice getting furious. I tried to tell you, Bob. Well, I did. She grabbed the wrong potion and just chugged it down. Bob's skull turned toward me a bit and the lights brightened. You've got to admit, though, the love potion works great. Susan was kissing my chest and rubbing her body up against me in a fashion that was unladylike, extremely pleasant and distracting. Bob, I swear I'm going to lock you in a wall safe for the next 200 years. It's not my fault, Bob protested. Then watched what was happening through the circle of froggy eyes and kicked the section of the floor clear enough of debris for it to squat down on its haunches and stare, restless and ready as a cat waiting for a mouse to stick its head out its hole. Susan stared up at me with sultry eyes and tried to wrench me to the floor and consequently out of the circle's protective power. Bob continued to wail his innocence. Who says I don't know how to show a lady a good time? Chapter 14. Susan tugged at my neck and jerked my head down to hers for a kiss. As kisses went, well, it was extremely interesting, perfectly passionate, abandoned, not a trace of self-consciousness or hesitation to it, or at any rate not from her. I came up for air a minute later, my lips itching with the intensity of it, and she stared at me with burning eyes. Take me, Harry, I need you. Susan, that's not really a good idea right now, I said. The potion had taken hold of her hard. No wonder she had recovered from her terror enough to come back up the stairs and fire my gun at the demon. It had lowered her inhibitions to a sufficient degree that it must have also dulled her fears. Susan's fingers wandered and her eyes sparkled. Your mouth says no, she purred, but this says yes. I went up on my toes and swallowed, trying to keep my balance and get her hand off of me at the same time. That thing always that thing is always saying something stupid. I told her she was beyond reason. The potion had kicked her libido to suicidal overdrive. Bob, help me out here. I'm stuck in the skull, Bob said. If you don't let me out, I can't do much of anything, Harry. Susan stood up on tiptoe to gnaw at my ear, wrapped her shapely thigh around one of mine, and started whimpering and pulling me toward the floor. My balance wavered. A 3-foot circle was not enough to perform wrestling or gymnastics or anything else in, without leaving something sticking out for the waiting demon to chew on. Is the other potion still there? I asked. Sure, Bob said. I could see it where it fell on the floor. Could throw it to you, too. Okay, I said, growing excited. Well, more excited. I might yet get out of this basement alive. I'm going to let you out for 5 minutes. I want you to help me by throwing me the potion. No, boss, Bob says, his voice manly cheerful. No? No? I get a 24-hour leave or nothing. Damn it, Bob, I'm responsible for what you do if I let you out. You know that. Susan whispered in my ear, I'm not wearing any underwear, and tried something approximating a pro wrestling takedown to drop me to the floor. I wavered in balance and barely managed to stave her off. The demon frog's eyes narrowed, and it came to its feet ready to leap on us. Bob, I yelled, you slimy jerk. You try living in a bony old skull for a few hundred years, Harry. You'd want to get a night off once in a while, too. Fine, I shouted, my heart leaping in my throat as my balance wavered again. Fine, just make sure you get me the potion. You have 24 hours. Just make sure you catch it, Bob replied, and then a flood of orange light flowed out of both the skull's eye sockets and into the room. The light swooped down in an elongated cloud over the potion ball that lay on the floor on the far side of the lab, gathered it up, and hurled it through the air toward me. I reached up with my spare hand and caught it, bobbled for a minute, and then secured it again. The orange lights that were Bob's spirit form danced a little jig and then whizzed up the ladder and out of the lab, vanishing. What's that? Susan murmured, eyes dazed. Another drink, I said. Drink this for me. I think I can cover us both in the focus department. Get us out of here. Harry, she said, I'm not thirsty. Her eyes smoldered. I'm hungry. I hit upon an idea. Once we drink this, I'll be ready and we can go to bed. She looked up at me hazily, smiled, wicked and delighted. "Oh, Harry, bottoms up." Her hands made sort of silent commentary on her words, and I jumped, almost dropping the bottle. More shampoo from my hair trailed down to my already burning eyes, and I squeezed them closed. I slugged away about half the potion, trying to ignore the flat cola taste, and quickly passed the rest to Susan. She smiled lazily and drank it down, licking her lips. It started in my guts, a sort of fluttery, wobbly feeling that moved out, up through my lungs and out along my shoulders, down my arms. It also went down over my hips and into my legs. I began to shake and quiver uncontrollably. And then I just flew apart into a cloud of million billion tiny pieces of hair, each one with its own perspective and view. The room wasn't just a square, cluttered basement to me, but a pattern of energies grouped into specific shapes and uses. Even the demon was only a cloud of particles, slow and dense. I flowed around that cloud up through the opening into the ceiling pattern outside the apartment into the raging non-pattern of the storm. It took maybe 5 seconds and the power of the potion faded. I felt all the little pieces of me abruptly rush back together and slam into one another at unthinkable speed. It hurt and made me nauseous, a sort of heavy-duty thump of impact that didn't come from any one direction, but from every direction at once. I staggered, planted my staff into the ground, and felt the rain wash down over me. Susan appeared next to me in a heartbeat later and promptly sat down on her butt on the ground in the rain. Oh, God, I feel terrible. Inside the apartment, the demon screamed, a raging, voiceless hiss. I could hear it madly rampaging around inside. "Come on," I told her. "We've got to get out of here before it gets smart and starts looking outside for us." "I'm sick," she said. "I'm not sure I can walk." "The mixed potions," I said. "They can do that to you, but we have to go now. Come on, Susan. Up and at 'em." I bent down and got her up to her feet, moving away from my apartment. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Do you have your car keys?" She patted the dress as if looking for pockets and shook her head dazedly. "They were in my coat pocket." We walked then. "Walk where?" "Over to Reading Road. It always floods when there's this much rain. There'll be enough water to drown that thing if it tries to follow us." It was only a couple blocks away. The cold rain came down in buckets. I was shaking, shivering, and naked, and more soap was getting in my eyes, but hey, at least I was clean. "What?" she mumbled. "What will the rain do to it?" "Not rain, running water. It kills him if he tries to go over it after us," I explained to her patiently. I hoped the potions mixing together in her stomach hadn't done anything irreversible. There had been accidents before. We were moving at a good speed, all things considered, and covered maybe 40 yards in the pouring rain. Not much farther to go. Oh, that's good," she said. And then she convulsed and pitched to the ground. I tried to hold her, but I was just too tired, my arms too weak. I nearly went down with her. She rolled to her side and lay that way, retching horribly, vomiting herself empty. Thunder and lightning raged around us again, and I heard the sharp crack of the storm's power touching a tree nearby. I saw a bright flash of contact and the subdued glow of burning branches. I looked in the direction we had been heading. The flooding Reading Road. Safety from the demon was still 30 yards away. "I didn't think you'd last this long," someone said. I almost jumped out of my skin. I picked up my staff in both hands and turned it in a slow circle, searching for the source of the voice. "Who's there?" There to one side, I spot a cold, not physical cold, but something deeper and darker than my other senses detected. A pooling of shadows, an illusion in the darkness between lights, gone when the lightning flashed and back again when it had passed. "Do you expect me to give you my name?" the shadow scorned. "Suffice to say that I'm the one who has killed you." "You're an underachiever," I shot back, still turning, eyes searching. "The job's not done." In the darkness underneath the broken street light, and then maybe 20 feet away, I could make out the shape of a person, man or woman, I couldn't tell, nor could I distinguish from the voice. "Soon," the shape said. "You can't last much longer. My demon will finish you before another 10 minutes have passed." The voice was supremely confident. "You called that demon here?" "Indeed," the shadowy shape confirmed. "Are you crazy?" I demanded, stunned. "Don't you know what could happen to you if that thing gets loose?" "It won't," the shape assured me. "It's mine to control." I extended my senses toward the shape and found that what I suspected was true. It wasn't a real person or an illusion masking a real person. It was only seeming of one, a phantasm of shape and sound, a hologram that could see and hear and speak for its creator, wherever he or she was. "What are you doing?" it demanded. It must have sensed me feeling it out. "Checking your credentials," I said, and sent some of my remaining will toward it, the sorcerer's equivalent of a slap in the face. The image cried out in surprise and reeled back. "How did you do that?" it snarled. "I went to school." The hologram growled and raised up its voice, calling out in rolling syllables. I tried to hear what had been said, but another peal of thunder blocked out the middle half of what was undoubtedly the demon's name. From within my apartment, the distant, faint sound of the demon's smashing ruckus came to an abrupt halt. "Now," the image said, a sneer to his voice, "now you will pay." "Why are you doing this?" I demanded. "You're in my way." "Let the woman go." "Sorry," the image said. "She's seen too much. She's in the way now, too. My demon will kill you both." You bastard, I snarled. It laughed at me. I looked over my shoulder, back toward the apartment. Through the rain, I could hear a dry hat and raspy hiss, underlaid with a sort of clicking growl. Blue frog eyes reflecting the storm's lightning came up the stairs from my basement apartment. It focused on me immediately and started forward. The back fender of Susan's car, which she had parked outside my apartment, got in its way, and with the pad-tipped fingers of one skinny, soft-looking hand, it picked up the bandit end of the car and tossed it to one side, where it landed with a heavy crunch. I tried not to think about those fingers around my throat. You see, the image said, mine to call. Time for you to die, Mr. Dresden. Another flash of light showed the demon falling to all fours and scrambling toward me like an overweight lizard, scuttling across the hot sand to shade in an exaggerated wagging motion that looked ridiculous but brought it closer and closer at deceptive speed. Deposit another quarter to continue your call, asshole, I said. I thrust my staff toward the shadowy image, this time focusing my will into a full-fledged attack. Stergalum Panatus! Scarlet light abruptly flooded over it, devouring its edges and moving inward. The image snarled and gasped in pain. Dresden, my demon will roll in your bones! And then it broke off into a scream of anguish as my counterspell began to tear the image sending apart. I was better than whoever made the image, and they couldn't hold the spell in the face of my counter. The image and the scream alike faded slowly into the distance till both were gone. I allowed myself the smallest touch of satisfaction, then turned to the woman on the ground. Susan, I said, crouching by her, keeping my eyes on the onrushing demon. Susan, get up. We have to go. I can't, she said. Oh, God. And then she threw up some more. She tried to rise, but collapsed back to the ground, moaning piteously. I looked back at the water, gauging the thing's speed. It was coming fast, but not quite as fast as a man could run. I could still escape it if I ran full out. I could get across the water. I could be safe, but I couldn't carry Susan there. I'd never make it with her slowing me down, but if I didn't go, both of us would die. Wouldn't it be better for one of us, at least, to live? I looked back at the demon. I was exhausted, and it had caught me unprepared. The heavy rain would keep fire, man's ancient weapon, against the darkness and things it hid from being effective in holding it back, and I didn't have enough left in me to do anything else. It'd be good as suicide to stand against it. Susan sobbed on the ground, helpless in the rain, sick from my potions, unable to rise. I leaned my head back and let the rain wash the last traces of shampoo from my eyes, my hair, and then I took a step forward toward the oncoming demon. I couldn't leave Susan to that thing, not even if it meant dying. I'd never be able to live with myself afterward. The demon squalled something at me in its hissing, toady voice and raised both its hands toward me, coming up onto its hind legs. Lightning flashed overhead, blinding bright. The thunder came hard on its heels, deep enough to shake the street beneath my bare feet. Thunder, lightning, the storm. I looked up at the boiling clouds overhead, lit by the dancing lightning moving among them, deadly beautiful and luminous. Power seethed and danced in the storm, mystic energies as old as time. Enough power to shatter stones, superheat air, boil water to steam, burn anything it touched to ashes. At this point, I think it's safe to say I was desperate enough to try anything. The demon howled and waddled forward, clumsy and quick. I raised my staff to the sky with one hand, and with the other pointed a finger at the demon. This was dangerous work, tapping the storm. There was no ritual to give it shape, no circle to protect me, not even words to shield my mind from the way the energies of magic would course through it. I sent my senses coursing upward toward the storm, taking hold of the formless powers and drawing them into patterns of raw energy that began to surge toward me, toward the tip of my staff. Harry, Susan said, what are you doing? She huddled on the ground in her evening dress, shuddering. Her voice was weak and thready. You ever form a line of people holding hands when you were a kid and scuff your feet across the carpeting together and then have that last person line touch someone on the ear to zap them? Yeah, she said, confused. I'm doing that, only bigger. The demon squalled again and drove itself into the air with its powerful toad legs hurtling toward me, sailing through the air with frightening and unnatural grace. I focused what little I had left of my will on the staff and the clouds and the raging power above. Ventus, I shouted. Ventus fulmino. At my will, a spark leapt up from the tip of my staff toward the clouds above. It touched the rolling, restless belly of the storm. Hell roared down in response. Lightning, white-hot fury, and with a torrent of wind and rain all fell upon me, surging around the staff. I felt the power hit the end of the soaking wet wood with a jolt like a sledgehammer. It coursed down the staff into my hand, making my muscles convulse, bowing my naked body with the strain. It took everything I had to hold the image of what I wanted in my mind, to keep my hand pointed at the demon as it came for me, to keep the energy surging through me to wreak havoc on flesh less tender than mine. The demon was maybe 6 inches away when the storm's fury boiled down my body and out through my arm, out of my pointed finger, and took it in the heart. The force of it threw the thing back and up into the air and held it there, wreathed in a corona of blinding energy. The demon struggled, screamed, toad hands flailing, toad legs kicking, and then exploded in a wash of blue flame. The night was lit once more, bright as day. I had to shield my eyes against it. Susan cried out in fear, and I think I must have been screaming along with her. And then the night grew quiet again. Flaming bits of something that I didn't want to think about were raining down around us, landing with little wet plopping sounds upon the road, the sidewalk, the yards of the houses around me, burning quickly into little briquettes of charcoal, and then hissing into sputtering coolness. The wind abruptly died down, the rain slowed into a gentle pattern, the storm's fury spent. My legs gave out, and I sat down shakily on the street, stunned. My hair was dry and standing on end. There was smoke curling up from the blackened ends of my toenails. I just sat there, happy to be alive, to be breathing in and out again. And I felt like I could crawl back into bed and go to sleep for a few days, even though I'd gotten up not a half an hour ago. Susan sat up, blinking, her face blank. She stared at me. "What are you doing next Saturday?" I asked her. She just kept staring on for a minute and then quietly lay down again on her side. I heard the footsteps approach from the darkness off to one side. "Summoning demons," the sour voice said, disgusted. "In addition to the atrocities you've already committed, I knew I smelled black magic on the winds tonight. You're a blight, Dresden." I sort of rolled my head over to one side to regard Morgan, my warden, tall and massive in his black trench coat. The rain had plastered his graying hair down to his head and coursed down the lines of his face like channels on a slab of stone. "I didn't call that thing," I said. My voice was slurred with fatigue, "but I damn well sent it back to where it belongs, didn't you see?" "I saw you defend yourself against it," Morgan said, "but I didn't see anyone else summon it. You probably called it up yourself and lost control of it. It couldn't have taken me anyway, Dresden. It wouldn't have done you any good." I laughed weakly. "You're flattering yourself," I said. "I sure as hell wouldn't risk calling up a demon just to get to you, Morgan." He narrowed his already narrow eyes. "I have convened the council," he said. "They'll be here in 2 dawns hence. They'll hear my testimony, Dresden, and the evidence I have to present them against you." There was another more subdued flash of lightning that gave his eyes a wild madman's gleam. "And then they'll order you put to death." I just stared at him for a moment dully. "The council," I said. "They're coming here, to Chicago." Morgan smiled at me, the kind of smile sharks reserve for baby seals. "Dawn, on Monday, you'll be brought before them. I don't usually enjoy my position as executioner, Harry. Blackstone, Copperfield, Dresden, but in your case, I'm proud to fulfill that role." I shuddered when he pronounced my full name. He did almost exactly right, maybe by accident, maybe not, too. There were those on the White Council who knew my name, knew how to say it. To run from the council convened to avoid them would be to admit guilt and invite disaster. And because they knew my name, they could find me, they could get to me anywhere. Susan moaned and stirred. "Harry," she mumbled, "what happened?" I turned to her to make sure she was all right. When I glanced back over my shoulder, Morgan was gone. Susan sneezed and huddled against me. I put her arm around her to share what little warmth I had. Monday morning. Monday morning, Morgan would bring his suspicions and level his accusations. It would likely be enough to get me voted dead. Whoever Mr. or Miss Shadows was, I had to find him, her, it, or them before Monday morning, or I was as good as dead. I was reflecting on what a miserable date I was when the squad car pulled up, turning its spotlights on us, and the officer said over the loudspeakers, "Set the stick down and put your hands up. Don't make any sudden moves." Perfectly natural, I thought, embracing a sort of exhausted stoicism for the officer to arrest a naked man and a woman dressed in an evening gown sitting on the sidewalk in the pouring rain like a couple of drunks fresh on the bender. Susan shielded her eyes and then looked at the spotlight. All the throwing up she had done must have got rid of the potion in her and in its amorous effects. "This," she said in a calm and dispassionate voice, "is the worst night of my life." The officers got out of the car and started toward us. I grunted. "That's what you get for trying to go out with a wizard." She glanced aside at me, and her eyes glittered darkly for a moment. She almost smiled, but there was sort of vindictive satisfaction to her tone when she spoke. "But this is going to make a fantastic story." Some people. Yet another beverage break. Chapter 15. As it turned out, Linda Randall had a darn good reason for skipping out on our appointment Saturday night. Linda Randall was dead. I sneezed as I ducked under the yellow police tape and the sweatpants and t-shirt I'd been allowed to pluck from the mess of my place before the police car had brought me across town to Linda Randall's apartment in cowboy boots. Mister had dragged one of my sneakers off, and I hadn't had time to find it. So I wore what I had, freaking cat. Linda had died a bit earlier that evening. After getting to the scene, Murphy had tried to phone me, failed to get through, and then sent a squad car down to pick me up and bring me to do my consultant bit. The dutiful patrolman sent to collect me had stopped to check out the crazy naked guy a block away from my apartment and was surprised and more than a little suspicious when I turned out to be the very same man that was supposed to pick up and bring to the crime scene. Dear Susan had come to my rescue, explaining away what had happened as just one of those things, tee-hee, and assuring the officers that she was all right and would be fine to drive home. She got a little pale around the edges when she saw once more the ruins of my apartment and the enormous dent the demon had put in the side of her car, but she made a bold face of it and eventually left the scene with a "I have a story to write" gleam in her eye. She stopped and gave me a kiss on the cheek on her way out and whispered, "Not bad, Harry," in my ear, and then she patted my bare ass and got in her car. I blushed. I don't think the cops noticed it in the rain and the dark. The patrolman had looked at me askance, but were more than happy to let me go out and put some fresh clothes. The only things I had clean were more sweats and another T-shirt. This one proclaimed in bold letters over a cartoon graveyard, "Easter had been canceled. They found the body." I put those on in my duster, which had somehow survived the demon attack, and in my utterly inappropriate cowboy boots. And then I got into the patrol car and was driven across town. I clipped my little ID card in my coat's lapel and followed the uniforms in. One of them led me to Murphy. On the way, I took in the little details. There were a lot of people standing around gawking. I was still fairly early after all. The rain came down in a fine mist and softened the contours of the scene. There were several police cars parked in the apartment building's parking lot, and one on the lawn by the door leading out to the concrete patio from the apartment in question. Someone had left his bulbs on, and blue lights flashed over the scene, alternating swathes of shadow and cold light. There was a lot of yellow police tape around, and right in the middle of it all was Murphy. She looked terrible, like she hadn't eaten anything that didn't come out of a vending machine or drunk anything but stale coffee since I had seen her last. Her blue eyes were tired and bloodshot, but still sharp-dressed, and she said, she peered up at me, "You plan on having King Kong climb your hair?" I tried to smile at her. "We still need to cast our screaming damsel. Interested?" Murphy snorted. She snorts really well for someone with such a cute nose. "Come on," she spun on one heel and walked to the apartment as though she wasn't exhausted and at the end of her rope. The forensic team was already there, so we got some nifty plastic booties to put over our shoes and loose plastic gloves for our hands from an officer standing beside the door. "I tried to call earlier," Murphy said, "but your phone was out of service. Again, Harry." "Bad night for it," I responded, wobbling as I slipped the booties on. "What's the story?" "Another victim," she said. "Same M.O. as Tommy Tom and the Stanton woman." "Jesus," I said, "they're using the storms." "What?" Murphy said. Murphy turned and fixed her eyes on me. "The storm," I repeated. "You can tap storms and other natural phenomena to get things done. Off natural fuel for the mojo." "You didn't say anything about that before," Murphy accused. "I hadn't thought of it until tonight." I rubbed at my face. It made sense. Hell's bells. That was how the Shadow Man had been able to do all that in one night. He'd called the demon and been able to send it after me, as well as appearing in the shadow he projected, and he'd been able to kill again. "Have you got an idea on the victim?" I asked. Murphy turned to go inside as she answered, "Linda Randall, chauffeur, age 29. It was a good thing Murphy had turned away, or the way my jaw dropped would have told her that I knew the deceased, and she would have all sorts of uncomfortable questions. I stared after Murphy for a second and then hurriedly veiled my expression and followed her inside the apartment. Linda Randall's one-room apartment looked like the trailer of a rock band that did little besides play concerts, host parties, and fall into a stupor afterward. Dirty clothes were strewn on one side of a king-size bed. There was a disproportionate amount of clothing that looked like as though it had been purchased from Frederick's Hollywood catalog. Lacy and silky and satiny colors, all bright, designed to attract the eye. There were many candles around the bed on shelves and dressers, and the night table almost burned halfway down. The drawer of the night table was partly open, revealing a number of personal amusements. Linda Randall had apparently liked her toys. The kitchenette off to one side looked largely unused except for the coffee pot, the microwave, and the trash can in which several pizza boxes were crammed. Maybe it was the pizza boxes that did it, that gave me a sudden pang of understanding and empathy for Linda. My own kitchen looked the same a lot of the time, minus the microwave. Here had lived someone who knew that the only thing waiting at home was a sense of loneliness. Sometimes it is comforting. Most often it isn't. I bet Linda would have understood that. But I'd never had the chance to know. The forensics team was gathered around the bed, concealing whatever was there, like a cluster of buzzards around the exposed head of the outlaws they used to bury up to their necks in the Old West. They spoke among themselves in low, calm voices, dispassionate as skilled dinner chatter, calling little details to the attention of their companions, complimenting one another on their observations. "Harry," Murphy said quietly. Her tone of voice suggested this wasn't the first time she had said it. "Are you sure you're all right after this? You're all right for this?" My mouth twitched. Of course, I wasn't all right for this. No one should ever be all right for this sort of thing. But instead of saying that, I told her, my head's just aching. Sorry, let's just get it over with. She nodded and led me over to the bed. Murphy was a lot shorter than most of the men and women working around the bed, but I had almost head of height on all of them. So I didn't have to ask anyone to move, just stepped up close to the bed and looked. Linda had been on the phone when she died. She was naked. Even this early in the year, she had tan lines around her hips. She must have gone to a tanning booth during the winter. Her hair was still damp. She lay on her back, her eyes half closed, her expression tranquil, as if it hadn't been any time I'd seen her. Her heart had been torn out. It was laying on the king-size bed about a foot and a half from her, pulped and squashed and slippery, sort of scarlet and gray color. There was a hole in her chest, too, showing where the bone had been splintered outward by the force that had removed her heart. I just stared for a few moments, noting details in a sort of detached way. Again, someone has used magic to end a life. I had to think of her as she sounded on the phone, joking, a quick wit, a sort of sly sensuality. In the way she said her words and phrased her sentences, a little hint of insecurity around the edges, vulnerability that magnified the other parts of her personality. Her hair was damp because she'd been taking a bath before she came to see me. Whatever anyone had said of her, she had been passionately, vitally alive. Had been. Eventually, I realized how quiet the room was. The men and women of the forensics team, all five of them, were looking up at me, waiting. As I looked around, they all averted their gazes, but you didn't have to be a wizard to see what was in their faces. Fear, pure and simple. They had been faced with something that science couldn't explain. It rattled them, shook them to their cores. This sudden, violent, and bloody evidence of that 300 years of science and research was no match for things that were still, even after all this time, lurking in the dark. And I was the one who was supposed to have the answers. I didn't have any for them, and I felt like shit for remaining silent as I stepped back and turned away from Linda's body, then walked across the room to the small bathroom. The tub was still full of water. A bracelet and earrings were laid out on the counter in front of the mirror, plus a little makeup and bottle of perfume. Murphy appeared beside me and stood with me, looking at the bathroom. She seemed a lot smaller than she usually does. She called us, Murphy said. 911 has the call recorded. That's how we knew to come out here. She called and said that she knew who had killed Jennifer Staunton and Tommy Tom, and now they were coming for her. Then she started screaming. That's when the spell hit her. The phone probably went out right after. Murphy frowned up at me and nodded. Yeah, it did, but it was working fine when we got here. Magic disrupts technology sometimes, you know that. I rubbed one eye. Have you talked to any relatives, anything like that? Murphy shook her head. There aren't any relatives in town. We're looking now, but it might take some time. We tried to reach her boss, but he wasn't available. Or Mr. Beckett? She studied my face, waiting for me to say something. You ever heard of him? She asked after a moment. I didn't look back at Murphy. I shrugged. Murphy's jaw tensed, little motions at the corner of her face. Then she said, Greg and Helen Beckett, 3 years ago. Their daughter Amanda was killed in a crossfire. Johnny Marcone's thugs were shooting it out with some of the Jamaican gang that was trying to muscle in on their territory back then. One of them shot the little girl. She lived for 3 weeks in intensive care and died when they took her off life support. I didn't say anything, but I thought of Mrs. Beckett's numb face and dead eyes. The Becketts attempted to lodge a wrongful death suit against Johnny Marcone, but Marcone's lawyers are too good. They got it thrown out before it even went to court, and they never found the man who shot the little girl. Word has it that Marcone offered to pay them blood money, make reparation, but they turned him down. I didn't say anything. Behind us, they were putting Linda in a body bag, sending her in. I heard men count to 3 and lift her and put her under a gurney of some kind and wheel her out. One of the forensics guys told Murphy they were going to take a break and would be back in 10 minutes. She nodded and sent them out. The room got even more quiet. Well, Harry, she said, her voice was hushed like she didn't want to disturb the apartment's new stillness. What can you tell me? There was a subtle weight to her question. She might as well have asked me what I wasn't telling her. That's what she meant. She took her hand out of her jacket pocket and handed me a plastic bag. I took it. Inside was my business card, the one I'd given to Linda. It was still curled a little where I had to palm it. It was also speckled with what I presume was Linda's blood. It looked like the part of the bag where you write the case number and the identification of the piece of evidence. It was blank. It wasn't on the records. It wasn't official yet. Murphy was just waiting for my answer. She wanted me to tell her something. Just wasn't sure if she was waiting for me to tell her that a lot of people had my card and that I didn't know how I'd gotten here, or if she wanted me to say how I'd known the victim, how I'd been involved with her, and then she would have to ask me questions, the kind of questions you ask suspects. If I tell you, I said, that I was having a psychic premonition, would you take me seriously? What kind of premonition? She said. She didn't look up at me. I paused, thinking of my words. I wanted to be very clear. I sense that this woman will have a police record, probably for possession of narcotics and solicitation. I sense that she used to work at the Velvet Room for Madame Bianca. I sense that she used to be close friends and lovers with Jennifer Stanton. I sense that if she had been approached yesterday and asked about those deaths, she would have claimed to know nothing. Murphy mulled over my words for a moment. You know, Dresden, she said, her voice tight, cool, and furious. If you'd sensed these things yesterday, or maybe even this morning, it's possible we could have talked to her. It's possible that we could have found something from her. It's even possible, and she turned to me and slammed me against the doorway with one forearm, and the weight of her body suddenly and shockingly hard. It's even possible, she snarled, that she'd still be alive. She looked up at my face, and she didn't look at all like the cutesy cheerleader now. She looked like a mother wolf standing over the body of one of her cubs and getting ready to make someone pay for it. This time I was the one to look away. A lot of people have my card. I said I put them up all over the place. I don't know how she got it. God damn it, Dresden, she said. She stepped back from me and walked away toward the bloodstained sheets. You're holding out on me. I know you are. I can get a warrant for your arrest. I can have you brought in for questioning. She turned back to me. Someone's killed 3 people already. It's my job to stop them. It's what I do. I didn't say anything. Give me a second. I hate it when I get that tickle. Excuse me. One second. I apologize. I got that tickle down my throat and it just really sucks. You know when your sinuses tickle down your throat, it really sucks. I didn't say anything. I could smell the soap and shampoo from Linda Randall's bath. Don't make me choose, Harry. Her voice softened, if not her eyes or her face. Please. I thought about it. I could bring everything to her. That's what she was asking. Not half the story, not part of the information. She wanted it all. She wanted all the pieces in front of her so she could puzzle them together and bring the bad guys in. She didn't want to work the puzzle knowing that I was keeping some of the pieces in my pocket. What could it hurt? Linda Randall had called me earlier that evening. She had planned on coming to me to talk to me. She was going to give me some information. Someone had shut her up before she could. I saw 2 problems with telling Murphy that. One, she would start thinking like a cop. It would not be hard to find out that Linda wasn't exactly a high fidelity piece of equipment. That she had numerous lovers on both sides of the fence. What if she and I were closer than I was admitting? What if I'd used magic to kill her? And her What if I used magic to kill her lovers in a fit of jealous rage and then waited for another storm to kill her too? It sounded plausible, workable, a crime of passion. Murphy had to know that the DA would have a hell of a time proving magic as a murder weapon, but if it had been a gun instead, it would have flown. The second problem, and the one that worried me a lot more, that there were already 3 people dead, and if I hadn't gotten lucky and creative, there'd be 2 more dead people back at my apartment. I still didn't know who the bad guy was. Telling Murphy what little more I knew wouldn't give her any helpful information. It would only ask her. It would only make her ask more questions than she wanted answers. If the voice in the shadows knew that Murphy was heading the investigation to find him and was on the right track, he would have no qualms about killing her too, and there was nothing she could do to protect herself against it. She might have been formidable to your average criminal, but all the Aikido in the world wouldn't do any good against a demon. Then there too was the White Council, men like Morgan and his superiors, securing their own power, arrogant and considering themselves above the authority of any laws but their own, who wouldn't hesitate to remove one police lieutenant who had discovered the secret world of the White Council. I looked at the bloodstained sheets and thought of Linda's corpse. I thought of Murphy's office, what it would look like with her sprawled on the floor, her heart torn from her chest, or her throat torn out by some creeping thing from beyond. Sorry, Murph, I said. My voice came out in a rasping whisper. I wish I could help you. I don't know anything useful. I didn't try to look up at her and didn't try to hide, but I was lying. I sensed more than saw the hardening around her eyes, the little lines of hurt and anger. I'm not sure if a tear fell or if she really just raised a hand to brush back some hair. Then she turned to the front door and shouted, Carmichael, get your ass in here. Carmichael looked equally as slobbish as he had a few days ago, as though the passage of time hadn't changed him. It certainly hadn't changed his jacket, only the food stains on his tie and his particular pattern rumplement of his hair. There had to be something comforting, I reflected, and that's kind of stability. No matter how bad things got, no matter how horrible or sickening the scene, you could count on Carmichael to look like the same quality of crap. He glared at me as he came in. Yeah? She tossed the plastic bag to me and he called it. Mark that and log it, she said. Hang around for a minute. I want a witness. Carmichael looked down at the bag and saw my card. His beady eyes widened. He looked back up at me and I saw the shifting gears in his head, reclassifying me from annoying ally to suspect. Mr. Dresden, Murphy said. She kept her tone frosty, polite. There are some questions we'd like to ask you. Do you think you'd come down to the station and make a statement? Questions to be asked. The White Council would convene and execute me in a little more than 30 hours. I didn't have time for questions. I'm sorry, Lieutenant. I've got to comb my hair tonight. Tomorrow morning, then, she said. We'll see, I said. If you aren't there in the morning, Murphy said, I'm going to ask for a warrant. We'll come and find you, and by God, Harry, I'll get some answers to this. Suit yourself, I told her. And I started for the door. Carmichael took a step forward and stood in my way. I stopped and looked at him, and he kept his eyes focused on the center of my chest. If I'm not under arrest, I told her, then I presume I'm free to go. Let him go, Ron. Murphy said. Her tone voice was disgusted, but I could hear the hurt underneath it. I'll talk to you again soon, Mr. Dresden. She stepped closer and said in a perfectly even tone, and if it turns out that you're the one behind all this, rest assured, whatever you can do and whatever you can pull, I will find you and I will bring you down. Do you understand me? I did understand, really. I understood the pressure she was under, her frustration, her anger, and her determination to stop the killing from happening again. If it if I was some kind of hero from the romance novel, I'd have said something brief and eloquent and heartrending, but I'm just me. So I said, I do understand, Karen. Carmichael stepped out of my way, and I walked away from Murphy, who I couldn't talk to, and from Linda, who I couldn't protect, my head aching, worried in my bones, and feeling like a total piece of shit. I can't believe I've already been reading for an hour and a half. Chapter 16. I walked down the block from Linda Reynolds' apartment building. My thoughts and emotions are far more furious thunderstorm than the one now rolling away from the city. Out over the vastness of the lake, I called a cab from the payphone outside the gas station and stood about with my back resting against the wall of the building in the misting rain, scowling and waiting. I had lost Murphy's trust. It didn't matter that I had done what I had to protect both her and myself. Noble intentions mean nothing. It was the results that counted, and the results of my actions had been telling a bald-faced lie to one of the only people I could come close to calling a friend. And I wasn't sure that even if I found the person and persons responsible, even if I worked hard to bring them down, even if I did Murphy's job for her, that what happened between us would ever be smoothed over. Pardon me. My thoughts were on that topic and similar issues of doom and gloom when when a man with a hat pulled low over his face began to walk past me, stopped halfway, and turned and drove his fist into my belly. I had time to think, not again. And then he struck me a second and third time. Each blow drove into my guts, thrust me back against the unyielding wall, and made me sick. My breath flew out of my mouth in a little strangling gasp, and even if I'd had a spell already in mind, I wouldn't have had the breath to speak it. I sort of sagged when he stopped hitting me, and he threw me to the ground. We were at a well-lit gas station just before midnight on a Friday night, and anything he did was in full view of any cars going by. Surely, God, he didn't plan on killing me. Though at that moment I was too tired and achy to care. I lay there for a moment dazed. I could smell my attacker's sweat and cologne. I could tell it was the same person who had jumped me the night before. He grabbed my hair, jerked my head up, and with an audible snip of steel scissors cut off a big lock of my hair and then let me go. My blood went cold. My hair. The man who cut off my hair could be used in almost any kind of magic, any kind of deadly spell, and there wouldn't be a damn thing I could do to stop it. The man turned away, walking quickly but not running. In a flood of panic and desperation, I lifted his leg, got him around the knee, and yanked hard. I heard a distinctive little pop, and then a man screamed, "Son of a bitch!" and fell heavily to the earth. One fist, one very large and knob-knuckle fist, was clutched around my hair. I tried to suck in a breath and leapt for that hand. My attacker's hat had fallen off, and I recognized him, one of Johnny Marcone's men who had followed me from the hotel on Thursday afternoon. The one had begun limping after jogging after me for several blocks. Apparently, Gimpy had a trick knee, and I had just made it jump through its hoop. I grabbed his wrist and held on with both hands. I'm not a particularly strong man, but I'm made out of wire and stubborn as hell. I curled up around his wrist and hung on, trying to pry at his thick fingers. Gimpy tried to jerk his arm away. He was carrying a lot of muscle on that arm, but it wasn't enough to move the weight of my whole body. He shoved at me with his other arm, trying to push me off of him, then started pounding at me with the one fist. "Let go of me, damn it!" Gimpy shouted. "Get off me!" I hunched my head down, my shoulders up, and hung on. If I could dig my thumbs into his tendons for long enough, his hand would have to open, no matter how strong he was. I tried to imagine his wrist as Play-Doh, and my thumbs were solid steel, pushing into him, and held on for everything I was worth. I felt his fingers start to loosen. I could see the dark, thin strands of my hair. Jesus Christ, someone shouted. Hey, Mike, come out. Hey, Mike, come on. There were running footsteps. Then a couple of young guys dressed in jogging suits and sneakers came over and dragged me off Gimpy. I screamed incoherently as my hand slipped from Gimpy's wrist. Some of my hair spilled out onto the wet concrete, but more stayed in his grip as his fingers closed over it again. Easy, easy, man, one of the guys was saying as they dragged me off. Take it easy. There wasn't any use struggling against the pair of them. Instead, I dragged in a breath and managed to gasp, Wallet, he's got my wallet. Considering the way I was dressed compared to Gimpy's suit and coat, that was one lad that was never going to get off the ground, or at least it wouldn't have if Gimpy hadn't turned and started running away. Two men let me go, confused, and taking the cautious route, they started away, walking hurriedly back to their car. I struggled to my feet, and after Gimpy, wheezing like a leaky accordion, Gimpy headed across the street to a car and was already in it, leaving by the time I got there. I shambled to a halt in a cloud of his exhaust and stared dully after his tail lights, as he drove off in the misting rain. My heart pounded in my chest and didn't slow down even after I recovered my breath. My hair. Johnny Marcone now had a lock of my hair. He could give it to someone who used magic and use it to do whatever they damn well pleased to me. They could use my hair to tear my heart from my chest, rip it right out like they'd done to Jennifer Stanton, Tommy Tom, and poor Linda Randall. Marcone had warned me to stop twice, and now he was going to take me out once and for all. My weariness, fear, and fatigue were abruptly burned away by anger. Like hell, I snarled. Like hell, you will. All I had to do was find them. Find Johnny Marcone, find Gimpy, and find Marcone's wizard, who he or she was. Find them, get my hair back, lay them out like 9 pins, and send Murphy in to round them up. By God, I wasn't going to take this lying down. These assholes were serious. They'd already tried to kill me once, and they were coming after me again. Marcone and his boys. No, I thought, not Marcone. That didn't make any sense unless it had been Marcone's gang dealing with the 3-eye from the very beginning. If Marcone had a wizard residence, why would he have tried to bribe me away? Why not just swipe a lock of hair from me when he'd sent the thug with the hat and then kill me when I didn't pay attention? Could it be Marcone? Could it be his thug playing two sides of the street? I decided that ultimately it didn't matter. That one thing was clear. Someone had a lock of my hair. Some wizard somewhere meant to kill me. Whoever this wizard was, he wasn't much good. I'd seen that when I'd wiped out his shadow sending spell. He couldn't stand up to me if I could force him into a direct confrontation. He might have a lot of moxie and a lot of raw power to harness the storms as he had, and to slap a demon into servitude, but he was like a big gawky teenager new to his strength. I had more than just strength, more than just moxie. I had training, experience, and savvy on my side. Besides, at the moment I was mad enough to chew up nails and spit out paper clips. The Shadow Man couldn't take a shot at me yet. He didn't have that kind of strength. He needed to wait for the storms that came each spring and to use them to kill me. I had time. I had time to work. If I could just find out where they were, where Gimpy had taken my hair, I could go after them. The answer came to me in a flash, and it seemed simple. If the hair could be used as a link to the rest of me, I should be able to reverse it to create a link from me back to the hair. Hell, maybe I could just set it on fire, burn it all up from my apartment. The formula for the spell that would be screwy as hell, though. I needed Bob. Bob could help me work out a spell, figure out a formula like that in minutes instead of hours or days. I grimaced. Bob was gone and would be for almost another 24 hours. There was no way I could work out that formula in less than 10 or 12 hours by myself, and I didn't think my brain was coherent enough to come up with solid calculations at the moment anyway. I could have called Murphy. Murphy would have known where Marcone was lurking, and Gimpy would probably be nearby. She could have given me an idea, at least, of how to find Gentleman Johnny, Gimpy, and the Shadow Man, but she never would now, and if she did, she'd demand to know the whole story, and after I told her, she'd try to take me to protective custody or something ridiculous like that. I clenched my fists hard, and my nails dug into my palms. I should trim them sometime. I looked down at my nails, then hurriedly crossed the street to stand under the gas station's light and stared at my hands. There was blood under my fingernails, where they had bitten into Gimpy's wrists. I threw back my head and laughed. I had everything I needed. I moved back out of the misting rain and squatted down on the concrete sidewalk. I used a bit of chalk I keep in my duster pocket to sketch out a circle on the concrete surrounding me, then scraped the blood out from under my nails and put it on the concrete between my feet. It glistened in the fine, misty fall of rain. The next part took me a moment to figure out, but I settled for using the tracking spell I already knew rather than trying to modify it to something a little more dignified. I plucked out a couple of nose hairs and put them in the circle too, on top of the bits of Gimpy's skin and blood. Then I touched a finger to the chalk circle and willed energy into it, closing it off. I gathered up my energy from my anger, my renewed fear, my aching head and queasy stomach hurt to the spell. Segui Votro Tessitatum. There was a rush of energy that focused on my nostrils and made me sneeze several times in a row. Then it came to me, quite strongly, the scent of Gimpy's cologne. I stood up, opened the circle again with a swipe of my foot, and walked out of it. I turned a slow circle all the way around. Gimpy's scent came to me as strongly as from the southwest, out towards some of the richer suburbs of Chicago. I started laughing again. I had the son of a bitch. I could follow him back to Marcone or whoever he was working for, but I had to do it now. I hadn't been, I hadn't had enough blood to make it last long. Hey, buddy, the cabbie leaned out the window and glared at me, the engine running at idle, the end of his cheroot glowing orange. I stared at him for a second. What? He scowled. What? Are you deaf? Did someone call for a cab? I grinned at him, still angry, still a little lightheaded, still eager to kick Gimpy in the Shadow Man's teeth in. I did. Why do I get all the nuts? He said. Get in. I did, closing the door behind me. He eyed me suspiciously in the mirror and said, Where to? 2 stops, I told him. I gave him my apartment's address and sat back in the seat, my head automatically drawn toward the southwest, toward where the men who wanted to kill me were. That's 1, he said. Where's number 2? I narrowed my eyes. I needed a few things from my apartment. My talisman, my blaster rod, my staff, a fetish that could still be vital. And after that, I was going to have a serious talk with one of Chicago's biggest gangsters. I'll tell you when we get there. All right, that's chapter. I'm right at chapter 17. I'm going to take a quick break since the ad break will be here in just a moment. Just bear with it just a minute. I do apologize for the ad break, but I don't want to read anymore till it's over with. So I'm going to take a quick break, y'all, and just kind of enjoy the mellowness of the sounds, please. Sorry about the silence during the end of the prep time for the ad break. We are going to be on the ad break for the next 35 seconds or so, but I just need to take a little breather there. It's a little, I enjoy doing this for you guys. I really do. It's just sometimes it's a little taxing sometimes, especially when I get toward the end of the session. My voice kind of goes, I really need to arm up with something better to drink than just tea or water. I really do. I'm trying my best not to have a cough drop because I've been on cough drops for probably a good solid month prior to this week, because of the cold and stuff I had, and I'm still kind of getting over it. That's one reason for the tickle. And welcome back from the ad break. We're going to do probably about one more chapter, and we'll probably be about ready to switch over to the game to take my big break, and then, all right. We ended up at the Varsity, a club Marcone owned in the Chicago suburb. It was a busy place, catering to much of the college-age crowd to be found on this side of the city, and even at 1:30 in the morning, it was still fairly crowded for some place so isolated along the strip mall. The only business open at this time of the evening, the only lit windows in sight. Here's the funny thing. There is actually a restaurant called the Varsity in Athens, Georgia, that I'm aware of. I don't know if they have any other places, but I found that kind of funny that they had something like that. And of course, it was for the college minded people. Looney, the cabbie, muttered as he drove away. And I had to pause for a moment and agree with him. I hadn't directed him about. I had directed him about the meandering line, the spell I cast, letting me literally follow my nose along Gimpy's trail. The spell began fading almost the moment I'd cast it. I didn't have enough blood to make a more lasting enchantment, but it held long enough for me to zero in on the Varsity and identify Skimpy's car in the parking lot. I walked past the windows, and sure enough, in the large circular booth in the back, I saw Johnny Marcone, the bull-necked Mr. Hendricks, Skimpy, and Spike sitting together and talking. I ducked out of sight in a hurry before one of them noticed me, then walked back into the parking lot to consider exactly what I had at my disposal: a bracelet on each wrist, a ring, my blasting rod, and my staff. I thought of all the subtle and devious means by which I might tilt the situation in my favor: clever illusions, convenient altering electricity or water, a sudden invasion of rats or cockroaches. I could have managed any of them. Not many people who use magic are that versatile, but very few have the kind of experience and training it takes to put such spells together on the fly. I shook my head, irritated. I didn't have time to bother with subtlety. Power into the talisman, then power into the ring. I reached for the power in both the staff and the rod. Cool strength of wood and seething anger of fire stepped up to the front door of the Varsity. And then I blew it off its hinges. I blew it out rather than in. Pieces flew toward me and bounced off the shield of air I'd held in front of me, while others rained back behind me into the parking lot. It wouldn't do to injure a bunch of innocent diners on the other side. You only get one chance to make a first impression. Once the door was off, I pointed my blasting rod inside and spoke a command. The jukebox slammed back against the wall as though a cannonball had impacted and melted into a puddle of liquid plastic goo. The music squealed out of the speakers and stopped. I stepped into the doorway and released the pent-up wave of energy from around my ring. Starting at the door and circling through the room, the light bulbs began to explode with sharp little detonations and showers of powdered glass and glowing bits of filament. People at the bar and all the wooden tables scattered around the room reacted as people tend to do in this sort of situation. They started screaming and shouting, rising to their feet or ducking many tables in confusion. If you ducked out the fire door at the back of one side of the room, then there was an abrupt and profound silence. Everyone stood stock still and stared at the doorway. They stared at me. At the back table, Johnny Marcone regarded the doorway with his passionless, money-colored eyes. He was not smiling. Mr. Hendricks beside him was glaring at me, his single eyebrow lowered far enough to threaten him with blinding. Spike was tight-lipped and pale. Gimpy stared at me in pure horror. None of them made any moves or any sound. I guess seeing a wizard cut loose can do that to you. I'm going to try to do my best sneaking impression here. Little pig, let me in. I said to the silence. I planted my staff on the ground and narrowed my eyes at Marcone. I'd really like to talk to you for a minute, John. Marcone stared at me for the moment, and then his lips twitched up at the corners. You have a singular manner of persuasion, Mr. Dresden. He stood up and spoke aloud to the room without ever taking his eyes off me. He must have been angry, but the icy exterior concealed it. Ladies and gentlemen, the Varsity is closing early, it seemed. Please make an orderly exit through the door nearest you. Don't worry about your bills, Mr. Dresden. If you would step out of the doorway and allow my customers to leave. I stepped out of the doorway. The place cleared out fast, causing customers and staff alike, leaving me alone in the room with Marcone, Hendricks, Spike, and Gimpy. None of them moved as they waited for the customers, the witnesses, to leave. Gimpy started sweating. Hendricks' expression never changed. The big man was patient as a mountain lion ready to leap on the unsuspecting deer. I want my hair back, I said, as soon as the last college-age couple had hustled out the door. Beg pardon? Marcone said, his head tilted to one side, and he seemed genuinely puzzled. You heard me, I said. This piece of trash of yours? I swung my blasting rod and pointed at Gimpy. Just jumped me outside a gas station across town and cut off some of my hair. I want it back. I'm not going out like Tommy Tom did. Marcone's eyes abruptly shone with a terrible, cold, money-colored anger. He turned his head deliberately to Gimpy. Gimpy's broad face went a bit more pasty. He blinked a trickle of sweat out of his eyes. I don't know what he's talking about, boss. Marcone's gaze never wavered. I presume, Mr. Dresden, he said, that you have some kind of proof? Look at his left wrist, I said. He's got several fingernail marks on his skin where I grabbed him. Marcone nodded those cold tiger's eyes on Gimpy's and said almost gently, Well? He's lying, boss, Gimpy protested. He licked at his lips. Hell, I got some fingernail marks from my girl. He knew that. You know what you said. He's for real. He knows things. The pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Whoever killed Tommy Tom knows that I'm on his trail, I said. Your rival, whoever it is that's selling the 3-eye, Gimpy here must have gotten a sweet deal from him to turn on you. He's been providing your rival with information all along, running errands for him. Gimpy couldn't have played a game of poker to save his life. He stared at me in horror and shook his head in protest. There's an easy way to settle this, Marcone said, his voice smooth and even. Lawrence, show me your wrist. He's lying, boss, Gimpy Lawrence said again, but his voice was shaky. He's just trying to mess with your head. Lawrence, Marcone said, his tone the gentle reproof of a parent child. Gimpy Lawrence knew it was over. He saw the desperate decision in his face before he actually moved. Liar! He howled at me. He got up, lifting his hand from underneath the table. I had time to realize he held a revolver, virtually twin to my own .38 in his fist before he started shooting. And so he started blasting, Several things happened at the same time. I lifted my hand, focusing my will on the bracelet and tiny medieval side shields around my left wrist, and hardened the protective energies around me. Bullets hammered against it with whining noises, striking sparks in the near dark of the restaurant. Spike leapt clear of the table, staying low, a small Uzi-style automatic now in his hand. Hendricks was more ruthless and direct, reacting with the mindlessly violent instincts of a savage. With one hand, the big bodyguard hauled Marcone back, putting his own bulk between the mob boss and Gimpy Lawrence. With the other hand, he produced a compact semi-automatic. Gimpy Lawrence turned his head and saw Hendricks and his gun. He panicked, turning his own weapon toward the larger man. That was really fucking stupid. I'm sorry, but that was an editorial comment, but it was really fucking stupid. Hendricks shot him with a ruthless efficiency. 3 sharp claps to sound, 3 flashes of muzzle light. The first 2 shots hit Gimpy in the middle of his chest, driving him back a pair of steps. The third hit him over the right eyebrow, jerked his head back, and toppled him to the ground. Gimpy Lawrence had dark eyes like mine. I could see them. His head turned toward me as he lay there on the floor. I saw him blink once. Then the lights went out of them, and he was gone. I stood there for a moment, stunned. Grand entrance or not, wasn't what I wanted to happen. I didn't want to kill anyone. Hell, I didn't want anyone to die. Not me, not them. I felt sick. It had been sort of a game, a macho contest of showmanship. I'd been determined to win. All of a sudden, it wasn't a game anymore, and I just wanted to walk away from it all. Well, I wanted to walk away from it alive. We all stood there, no one moving. Then Marcone said from beneath Hendricks, I wanted him alive. He could have answered several questions first. Hendricks frowned and got up off Marcone. Sorry, boss. That's all right, Mr. Hendricks. Better to err on the side of caution, I suppose. Marcone stood up, straightened his tie, then went and knelt by the body. He felt the man's throat, then wrist, and shook his head. Lawrence, I would have paid you twice what they offered you if you'd come to me with it. You were never very smart, were you? Then his face showing no more emotion than it had the entire evening, Marcone peeled back Gimpy Lawrence's left sleeve and studied the man's wrist. He frowned and lowered the arm again, expression pensive. It would seem, Mr. Dresden, he said, that we have a common enemy. He turned to focus his gaze on me. Who is it? I shook my head. I don't know. If I did, I wouldn't be here. I thought maybe it was you. Marcone lifted his eyebrows. You should have known me better than that, Mr. Dresden. It was my turn to frown. You're right, I should have. The killings had been more vicious, savage than Marcone would have cared to use. Competitors might have been removed, but there would be no sense in making a production of it. Certainly, there would be no reason to murder bystanders like Linda, like Jennifer Stanton. It was ineffective and bad for business. If he had something of yours, you're welcome to take it, Mr. Dresden, Marcone said. He looked around the room and sighed. Better hurry. I think the varsity has seen its last crowd. Shame. It was hard, but I walked over to Gimpy Lawrence's body. I had set aside my stuff, my staff, my rod, to rifle the corpse's pockets. I felt like a ghoul crouched to the body of a dead man, picking what was valuable to me out of his pockets. I didn't find my hair anywhere. I looked at Marcone. He regarded me, my eyes without any reasonable emotion. Okay, 2-hour mark is hit. This will be my last chapter, as I'm almost done. Nothing, I told him. Interesting. He must have passed the material in question to someone else before he came here, Marcone said. Someone after he got here, maybe? Marcone shook his head. I'm quite sure he did not do that. I would have noticed. I believe you, I told him, and I said, but who? Our enemy, Marcone said, obviously. I closed my eyes, suddenly sagging with weariness. Damn it. Marcone said nothing. He stood up and issued a few quiet orders to Hendricks and Spike. Hendricks wiped down his gun with a napkin, then left it lying on the floor. Spike went over behind the bar and started to do something involving a power cord and a bottle of whiskey. I gathered up my staff rod and stood up and turned to Marcone. Tell me what else you know. I need everything you have if I'm going to catch this guy. Marcone considered this and nodded. Yes, you do. Unfortunately, you chose the public forum for this discussion. You have set yourself up in the eyes of anyone who cared to watch as my enemy. As understandable as your reasons might have been, the fact that you have publicly defiled me remains. I cannot let it go without response, regardless of my personal feelings. Without inviting more of the same, I must maintain control. It isn't personal, Mr. Dresden. It's business. I tightened my jaw and my grip on my blasting rod and made sure my shield was still there, ready to go. So what are you going to do about it? Nothing, he said. I need do nothing. Either our enemy will kill you, in which case I need not risk myself or my people in removing you, or you will find him in time and bring him down. If you do defeat him, I will let it be understood to any who ask that you did so at my behest, after which I will be inclined to forget this evening. Either way, it profits me best to wait and see. If he kills me, I pointed out, if I'm the next one to have my heart ripped out, you still won't know where he is. You won't be any closer to removing him and protecting your business. True, Marcone said. Then he smiled an expression that lasted only a fraction of a second. But I think you will not be such easy prey. I think that even if he kills you, he will reveal himself in some way. And since our encounter the other day, I think I have a better feel for what sort of things to look for. I scowled at him, turned to go, moving briskly toward the door. Harry, he said as I stopped, turned back around. On a personal note, I know nothing that would profit you in any case. All those people we managed to take revealed nothing. They were that afraid of him. No one seems to know just where the drug comes from what it is made, or where this person does business. Shadows, they say. That he's always in the shadows. That is all that is all that I have learned. I regarded Johnny Marcone for a moment, then nodded once. Thank you. He shrugged. Good luck. I think it would be best if you and I did not encounter one another in the future. I cannot tolerate any more interference in my affairs. I think that's a good idea, too, I said. Excellent. It is good to have someone who understands. And then he turned back toward the remaining two men, leaving the corpse of Gimpy Lawrence on the floor behind him. I turned and shrugged shadows of the place into the night and the cold and the misty rain. I still felt sick, could still see Gimpy Lawrence's eyes as he died. I could still hear Linda Randall's husky laughter in my head, and I still regretted lying to Murphy. And I still had no intention of telling her any more than I already had. I still didn't know who was trying to kill me. I still had no defense to present the White Council. Let's face it, Harry, I told myself, you're screwed. All right. That is the end of chapter 17. We actually got quite a few chapters read today. It's a little over 2 hours. That's not bad. Actually, I only read for like an hour and a half, give or take. But who's, not really gonna split hairs over it. I hope you guys enjoyed that. As long as I am still job searching and kind of in between jobs, I'm probably going to be streaming a lot more. So you never know. I might actually do another reading stream this week. I might do one, may do 2 or 3 next week. Who knows? I'm not really sticking to a schedule per se. I just felt like doing this because we need to kind of, get back into it. So, but anyway, I'm going to go BRB right quick, take a quick bio break and all that good stuff, and then I'm going to be switching games. I'll be switching to a game. So, I'll be right back, guys. Enjoy the clips.